Every ancient culture shares a common thread: stories of cataclysm, flood, and gods who taught humanity to build. We often dismiss these as mere myths, fanciful explanations for the rise of civilization. But what if these tales are veiled histories, oral accounts of real events obscured by time? What if the sinking of Atlantis, the global deluge, or the Sky People were not fiction but highly symbolic records of a catastrophic past that reset human progress? This journey begins in the space where mythology meets archaeology. We will investigate the global parallels in creation stories, the geological evidence for sudden climate shifts, and the forgotten science that might explain humanity's miraculous leaps in development. Prepare to see legends not as fantasy, but as blueprints, hinting at a truth far older, darker, and more incredible than any historian dares admit. The Neo-Assyrian Lamassu guardians were not merely massive statues placed at ancient gateways. They were among the strangest, most powerful, and most enigmatic symbols in the entire Mesopotamian world. Born during the Golden Age of Assyria, the Lamassu took the form of an unnatural hybrid creature, a human head with curled beard, the muscular body of a bull or lion, and the widespread wings of an eagle. This was not just a combination of three powerful animals in ancient belief. It was a declaration of authority, a message carved in stone, weighing tens of tons, sent to anyone daring to step through the royal gates. Even more curious, these statues were often sculpted with 5 legs, an artistic choice that remains difficult to fully explain. From the front, the Lamassu appears to stand still in divine majesty. From the side, it appears to walk forward. This optical illusion still amazes scholars today, especially since Assyria was not known for experimenting with illusionistic art. This raises the question: who conceived this technique, and why was it so important that it became a standard feature of every Lamassu for centuries? In your opinion, why did the Assyrians intentionally give the Lamassu 5 legs instead of the usual 4? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The power of the Lamassu lies not only in its majestic presence, but also in the astonishing engineering behind it. Each statue stands 3 to 4 meters tall and weighs 40 to 50 tons, carved from single stone blocks that the Assyrians transported over great distances from remote quarries to the heart of the empire. What seems unbelievable is that they accomplished this without metal pulleys, lifting machines, or modern load-bearing wheels. Moving such an enormous block across rough terrain, then raising it upright, rotating it precisely, and placing it perfectly at palace gateways remains a challenge that even today's engineers struggle to fully replicate. Did the Assyrians use wooden rollers, ropes, or elaborate ramp systems, or did they possess a sophisticated construction technique that has since been lost? The mystery deepens when we see how precisely these statues were aligned, their eyes always facing directly toward the entrance, as if a secret installation method once existed but is now erased from history. In Assyrian culture, Lamassu were believed to be divine guardian spirits that drove away evil and protected the palace and the king. Yet, their role seems to go far beyond simple religious symbolism. Many statues bear long inscriptions on their wings and bodies, including curses, warnings, prayers, and astrological markings. Some inscriptions belong to a now lost ritual language, making them nearly impossible for scholars to translate. This has led to the hypothesis that the Lamassu were not just physical guardians, but ritual codes, sacred objects storing protective formulas known only to Assyrian priests. This mysterious function adds an eerie spiritual weight to their presence. Another puzzling aspect is the absolute consistency of Lamassu design across generations of rulers. Despite being created over several centuries, the Lamassu show virtually no stylistic deviation. Body proportions, leg count, beard style, wingspan posture, and ornamentation remain identical. Scholars believe a sacred prototype may have existed, a master template that all sculptors were required to follow. This template could have taken the form of a ritual drawing a wooden model or a strict religious rule forbidding any alteration. If true, it means the lamassu were not simply artworks, but components of a tightly controlled spiritual system. Many modern scholars believe that the lamassu was not merely a protective spirit, but also a cosmic map embodied in the form of a mythical creature. The Mesopotamians were deeply knowledgeable about astronomy, and they believed that the movements of the stars were direct messages from the gods. For this reason, the lamassu's 5 legs are thought to symbolize the 5 planets visible to the naked eye: Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. The eagle wings are seen as the symbol of the sun, while the bull's body evokes the constellation Taurus, one of the oldest celestial symbols in ancient Near Eastern astronomy. This combination supports the theory that the lamassu represented the order of the heavens, a sacred cosmic structure. The king was responsible for maintaining, encoded directly into the creature's body. If this interpretation is correct, the lamassu was not just a guardian or a warning, but a reminder that the king's authority was sanctioned by the universe itself, where every celestial movement reflected the divine order of the gods. The lamassu did not vanish when the Assyrian Empire collapsed. Instead, its symbol lived on within Persian art and other Middle Eastern civilizations for millennia. The image of a hybrid guardian creature continued to be regarded as a sacred protective emblem, showing that the spiritual power of the lamassu far exceeded the limits of a stone sculpture. Today, when these statues appear in major museums around the world, viewers still sense something difficult to describe. They are not merely ancient carvings, but remnants of a ritual tradition, a secret belief, once deeply intertwined with the authority and cosmic worldview of the Assyrians. Within the entire story of the lamassu, this is the mystery that scholars have debated for many decades without reaching consensus. Although thousands of ancient lines of text have been deciphered, although the Palace of Sargon II has been excavated almost completely, and although modern techniques such as laser scanning and 3-dimensional reconstruction have examined every carved groove on the stone surface, no one has been able to answer the most fundamental question. Why did the Assyrians create a being so majestic, fierce, and supernatural that it surpassed all artistic norms of its time? What in its true nature is the lamassu? 3 main theories have been proposed, and each one opens an entirely different worldview. The first theory argues that the lamassu was the ultimate symbol of royal authority. Its colossal presence, piercing gaze, and immovable posture made anyone who stepped inside feel as though they were standing before a god delivering judgment. This was not mere art, but a psychological instrument designed to make subjects and enemies submit to the overwhelming power of the Assyrian king. The second theory takes the lamassu back to a past even older than Assyria, to pre-Sumerian rituals where people believed that hybrid divine beings could cross into the physical world. Some symbols carved on the lamassu belong to ritual languages that have been lost, leading many to believe the statue was the embodied form of a mysterious deity within an ancient religious system that Assyria inherited rather than invented. The third theory, also the most controversial, suggests that the lamassu is a petrified memory of supernatural entities from Mesopotamian mythology, the Watchers, who are said to observe humanity from the sky. Even if these beings never physically existed, their image may have taken deep root in the collective imagination and evolved into a symbol of power from a realm far beyond human understanding. Regardless of which theory may be true, one fact is undeniable. The lamassu was created to awaken fear, reverence, and an acute awareness of a supernatural force surpassing human comprehension. It is not merely a statue. It is a worldview turned into stone, the remnant of a belief system for which we no longer possess the key to decode. And finally, the most profound question of all, if the Lamassu truly served as a divine guardian, then what exactly was it guarding a king, a civilization, or a secret that the modern world is still not prepared to confront? Across the Egyptian desert, hidden among the ruins of a dynasty once condemned as heretical, lies a ceiling that sends a shiver down the spine of anyone who gazes upon it. The Amarna star map ceiling. It is not a painting, not a ritual diagram, and certainly not the familiar star charts of ancient Egypt. It is a frozen sky, a celestial tapestry, where dozens of strange astronomical symbols are carved with astonishing precision, yet they match none of the known sky systems of the ancient world. Created during the reign of Akhenaten, the pharaoh who overturned the entire religious order of Egypt, this star ceiling feels like a secret message preserved from that turbulent era, mesmerizing in its beauty, unnervingly precise, and so enigmatic that for more than a century, scholars still cannot agree on what sky the people of Amarna were truly trying to capture. What do you think the people of Amarna were truly trying to capture on this mysterious star ceiling? Share your theory in the comments below. When examining the Amarna star ceiling, the first thing that overwhelms viewers is its astonishingly intricate structure: constellations, grouped into clear clusters, broad sweeping arcs crossing the space, as if illustrating cosmic orbits, and a series of astronomical symbols arranged inside time-divided compartments that follow the rhythm of the night. The system of deacon stars used to divide nighttime hours appears with near astronomical precision. Yet when compared to the traditional Egyptian sky model, archaeologists discovered that many symbols do not correspond to any constellation ever documented. Some motifs resemble Mesopotamian astronomy, while others have no parallels in any ancient civilization. This puzzling blend turns the Amarna ceiling into an exceptional hybrid sky, visually stunning, logically structured, yet impossible to classify as purely Egyptian. This strangeness becomes even deeper when placed in the context of Akhenaten's reign, the only heretical period in Egyptian history. Akhenaten abandoned polytheism and centered all religion around Aten's solar disk, whose rays end in tiny hands. In countless centuries of Egyptian history, there was never another period where the sun was elevated to such an absolute position. Because of this, everything during this era, from temple architecture to artistic style, was shaped by the concept of a new order of light. The Amarna star ceiling is no exception. Its layout shows a tight connection between solar cycles, divine cycles, and priestly astronomical observation. But what makes it puzzling is that many elements do not match the real night sky of ancient Egypt. Some stars are in the wrong place, some constellations are exaggerated, and certain bright objects appear outside the rules of traditional stellar depiction. The bright objects depicted on the Amarna star ceiling are perhaps the most perplexing elements for researchers. They are drawn larger, sharper, and marked with distinctive lines that no other stars possess, suggesting they held a special significance within the composition. Some are surrounded by curved bands. Others appear to flare outward as if representing a phenomenon beyond the behavior of fixed stars. Some scholars argue these symbols depict Sirius, the sacred star tied to the Egyptian calendar. Others believe they represent Venus, a planet known for its dramatic shifts in brightness and frequently observed by ancient skywatchers. Yet a number of bold researchers propose that these symbols may record a rare celestial event, an unusually large comet, a supernova explosion, or an enigmatic burst of light witnessed by the people of Amarna. Whatever they signify, one thing is clear: these symbols were not decorative. They were placed with deliberate purpose. However, the deepest mystery does not lie in the ceiling's deviation from traditional star maps, but in the question that scholars still debate endlessly today. What exactly were the Amarna people observing? This is the central mystery, embedded in the entire ceiling. The most common hypothesis suggests that the people of Amarna depicted the actual sky they observed, but careful comparison immediately reveals numerous inconsistencies. The arrangement of constellations on the ceiling does not match the real Egyptian sky from over 3,300 years ago. Several constellations appear reversed, as if viewed from a different latitude, and the ecliptic line is shifted away from its expected position. Even the large, bright points do not correspond to any planet visible to the naked eye at that time. These discrepancies significantly weaken the idea that the ceiling represents a real sky, forcing scholars to search for alternative explanations. The second hypothesis suggests that the Amarna star ceiling was never meant to reflect the real sky, but rather an idealized celestial realm created for the Aten religion. When Akhenaten abolished the polytheistic system and established a singular cult of light, he may have instructed his priests to construct an entirely new cosmic model, a sacred sky dedicated solely to Aten, where every line and symbol expressed the divine order he sought to impose. The strange constellations may not correspond to the physical heavens at all, but instead represent the heaven of Aten. Yet the very technical precision of this map raises a difficult question if it was merely ritualistic. Why did the Amarna artisans render it with such detail, logic, and astronomical accuracy? This makes the ceremonial hypothesis far more complex than it initially appears. The third hypothesis, also the most controversial, suggests that the Amarna star ceiling was not created by the Amarna people at all, but is instead the remnant of an older astronomical system, possibly predating the pharaohs themselves. Many symbols on the ceiling do not match Egyptian tradition, yet they closely resemble astronomical motifs from Mesopotamia or other early Eastern civilizations. This has led some scholars to speculate that the Amarna priests inherited an ancient star map and attempted to modify it to fit the Aten religion. The discrepancies between the ceiling's layout and the real sky may reflect this process of altering something they did not fully understand. Although lacking direct evidence, the hypothesis remains compelling because it opens the possibility of a long-lost body of astronomical knowledge. The fourth hypothesis suggests that the Amarna star ceiling is a direct record of a rare celestial event that once astonished the people of Amarna. The large, bright points may not represent fixed stars, but instead the glow of an unusual comet, a newly ignited star, or even a supernova explosion they witnessed. Many ancient civilizations used symbolic imagery to depict strange phenomena in the sky, and Amarna may have done the same, yet with its own unique system of signs. The prominent size and deliberate placement of these symbols further strengthens the possibility that they represent an extraordinary event rather than ordinary stars. To this day, none of these hypotheses have been universally accepted. What is certain is that the Amarna star map ceiling is neither purely artistic, nor purely religious, nor purely scientific. It sits at the crossroads of all three, a hybrid celestial map reflecting the singular nature of the Amarna era. And thus the greatest question still lingers, haunting every researcher. What were the people of Amarna truly observing, and why did they engrave it into such an elaborate star ceiling? Across the ancient deserts of Mesopotamia, where the earliest Sumerian city-states first emerged, lies an artifact that continues to both astonish and unsettle archaeologists: the stele of the vultures. The enigmatic stone monument of Lagash. Created more than 4,500 years ago, it is not merely a record of warfare, but a doorway into the darkest corners of ancient thought: devotion to the gods, obsession with violence, political symbolism, and fear of invisible forces that governed the fate of Sumerian states. It stands as one of the oldest surviving war documents in human history. Yet the more we examine it, the more puzzling it becomes. Why do you think the Sumerians carved such brutal scenes? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The first thing that makes the stele of the vultures unique is the Sumerian method of storytelling, through imagery dividing the stone into two parallel realms, a human world where King Yanatum marches fights and triumphs, and a divine world where the god Ningirsu casts a mystical net to capture the enemies. No other contemporaneous stele shows such a vivid overlap between reality and mythology. It is as if the Sumerians wanted to say that no victory belonged solely to men. Divine hands were always behind it. The depiction of Lagash's army on the stele shows an exceptionally tight battle formation, soldiers standing shoulder to shoulder in a solid square block, their large shields interlocked into a seamless wall, bronze spears thrusting forward. This arrangement has surprised many scholars because it resembles the Greek phalanx, yet appears thousands of years earlier. This raises a critical question. Did the Sumerians possess a far more sophisticated military organization than we previously believed? Or is this image a symbolic representation meant to emphasize Lagash's overwhelming strength and absolute discipline? What makes the stele most haunting is the way violence is depicted so directly. Bodies piled atop one another, severed heads scattered across the ground, and vultures swooping down to tear at the flesh of the dead. Remarkably, the Sumerians did not soften or avoid these images. They carved them with such clarity that it feels almost intentionally shocking. While most Mesopotamian steles portray victory through ceremonial or idealized scenes that glorify the king, the stele of the vultures exposes the brutal reality of warfare, making it the boldest and most unusual artistic statement of early Sumerian art. The image of the god Ningirsu holding the divine net on the stele is one of the most difficult symbols to interpret in Sumerian art. Inside the net, the warriors of Umma are tightly bound, like fish caught in a trap, an intense metaphor for helplessness under divine power. What makes it even more mysterious is that this net appears in almost no other artworks and is barely mentioned in surviving Sumerian mythology. For this reason, many scholars believe it may represent traces of a lost religious ritual, or perhaps a symbol of a sacred divine weapon understood only by the priestly elite of Lagash. When examining the stele closely, one notices several unusual details. Human bodies are elongated or compressed in unnatural proportions, heads are carved disproportionately large, and weapons are held at angles that seem nearly impossible. This suggests that Sumerian art prioritized symbolism rather than realism. Yet the sharpness of the carvings is far beyond expectation. The grooves are incredibly fine, the edges perfectly clean, showing that the craftsmen of Lagash possessed techniques and tools so refined that many scholars believe they exceed what we can fully explain today. The greatest mystery surrounding the stele lies in this question: what was it truly created for, and why did the Sumerians choose to depict such raw and unfiltered violence based on what remains? Scholars have proposed three major theories, but significantly none of them fully explains all of the stele's strange details. The first theory suggests it was a form of deliberate, violent propaganda. In this view, the stele of the vultures served as a message to all Sumerian city-states. Those who oppose Lagash will face the fate of Umma. The gruesome detail of corpses and vultures devouring the dead may represent one of the earliest examples of psychological warfare in human history. However, many scholars question whether a single monument located within Lagash territory could truly spread fear to distant regions. The second theory proposes that the stele was a ritual object offered to the god Ningirsu in gratitude for victory. This would explain the prominent depiction of the deity and the divine net, symbolizing divine authority. Yet the stele shows an unusual amount of brutal, unrefined imagery, something not typically found in religious offerings. If its purpose was to honor a deity, why did the Sumerians choose such harsh and graphic scenes instead of more ceremonial and dignified ones? The third theory argues that the stele functioned as a territorial marker, originally placed in the contested region of Guadana, where Lagash and Umma clashed repeatedly. If this is true, the violent imagery would act as a stone warning, a visual threat to anyone daring to cross the boundary. However, archaeologists have not been able to identify its original location, so there is no certainty that it ever stood at the border. Here lies the most unsettling question. Why did the Sumerians carve scenes so gruesome? Not glorious victory, but raw exposed death. Some researchers think it was intended as a pictorial curse stele, similar to Egyptian execration texts. Depicting corpses eaten by vultures may symbolize ultimate dishonor, a fate feared in a culture that valued proper burial rituals. Others believe it references a lost funerary practice, perhaps an early form of sky burial, in which bodies were offered to birds so the spirit could be released. If true, the stele blends punishment with religious liberation. A bolder idea suggests the Sumerians believed depicting death on stone activated divine power, that reproducing the brutality of battle could magically ensure protection from ninjutsu. This blends politics with mysticism, imagery becoming a tool to manipulate reality. A significant portion of the stele has been broken away, and this absence only deepens the mystery surrounding the stele of the vultures. No one knows what the missing fragments once contained: a detailed account of battle strategy, a lost religious ritual, or perhaps even a message deliberately erased by ancient hands. What remains is like an unfinished mosaic, blending warfare, divine authority, and supernatural fear into a narrative that will never be whole again. This very incompleteness turns the stele into a somber reminder of a vanished world. Today, standing before the stele of the vultures, one does not simply witness an ancient battle. One sees how early humans understood death power and their own fragile existence on disputed land. Yet the central question remains: what did the Sumerians want us to feel when we looked at it? Fear, reverence, or the realization that borders are always written in blood? Until a second stele is found, or a missing explanatory text emerges, the stele of the vultures will remain one of the deepest mysteries of Sumerian civilization. Amid the cold marshes of Zealand, Denmark, places ancient people once regarded as gateways between the human world and the realm of the divine, archaeologists uncovered one of the strangest and most mysterious artifacts in European history: the bronze sun chariot of Trundholm. Created during the Bronze Age around 1400 to 1200 BCE, this object is not only a masterpiece of craftsmanship, but also a religious symbol filled with enigmatic meaning. More than 1 century after its discovery, scholars still cannot agree on what it was used for, what it represents, or what its true function was. A slender bronze horse pulls a double-sided solar disc mounted on 6 ceremonial wheels, a structure unlike anything else from the same period, and it marks the beginning of a long chain of unanswered questions. What do you think the sun chariot was truly made for? Share your thoughts in the comments below. What immediately puzzles researchers is the completely different design on the 2 sides of the disc. One side is covered in radiant gold leaf, interpreted as representing the sun during the day. The other side is dark bronze, symbolizing the sun at night as it travels into the underworld or beyond the invisible horizon. This suggests that the Bronze Age Scandinavians did not merely worship the sun as a single deity. They were thinking in terms of cosmic cycles, the perpetual movement of light and darkness. Creating a dual-faced model implies they had a conceptual understanding of celestial motion, a rare insight for cultures of Northern Europe at that time. The physical structure is equally unusual. The horse, an animal associated with power and ritual, is sculpted in an elegant stance, yet only one side of its body bears the spiraling decorative motifs, while the other side is completely smooth. Scholars debate whether this was a mistake by the artisan or a symbolic language modern people have not yet deciphered. One intriguing theory suggests the decorated side represents the day side, while the undecorated side represents the night side, mirroring the duality of the solar disk. Another theory suggests that during rituals, the chariot was always presented from one specific angle, so only the visible side needed decoration. With no ancient texts to support these ideas, the debate continues endlessly. The sun chariot is not only unusual in symbolism, but also in its advanced crafting technique far beyond what is typically found in Northern Europe during the Bronze Age. The artisan used the lost wax casting method, a sophisticated technique that allows finely detailed, smooth surfaces. The gold leaf was applied with astonishing precision, a surprising achievement for a society without written language or a professional artisan class like those of Greece or Egypt. The spiral motifs, concentric circles, and repeating patterns are nearly perfect, leading many scholars to believe that the creators belonged to an elite class, possibly shamans, ritual leaders, or a specially trained group of craftsmen dedicated to solar ceremonies. Even more curious is that the wheels can actually turn. This raises an important question. Was the sun chariot used in moving rituals? Did ancient people push or pull it across an altar, across the ground, or during ceremonial processions at sunrise? Although the wheels can rotate, there are no clear wear marks, so it's uncertain whether it was ever used in motion or was simply a static offering displayed in a sacred space. The sun chariot remains suspended between two possibilities: a symbolic model or a dynamic ritual tool used to reenact celestial movement. Its discovery site also deepens the mystery. The artifact was found in a bog, a place where ancient Scandinavians often deposited offerings to the gods. These cultures frequently placed weapons, crafted objects, and even human remains into still waters believed to be boundaries between the living world and the divine. What is unusual here is that only one single artifact was found in the area rather than a collection of ritual offerings typically associated with bog sacrifices. This suggests that the sun chariot may have been an elite sacred object created once and offered only during a uniquely significant ritual, possibly related to climate events, drought, or a major communal ceremony whose meaning has been lost to time. However, the greatest mystery, the question that has troubled archaeologists, religious historians, and symbolists for decades, is what was the sun chariot actually used for? This is no simple question. The Trundholm sun chariot is layered with meaning, and every theory seems to reflect only part of the truth. Below are the major hypotheses, though none are proven. The first hypothesis suggests that the sun chariot represents an early cosmological model used by ancient Scandinavians to explain the movement of the sun. They imagine the sun as a living entity drawn across the sky each day by a divine horse and descending into the underworld when night fell. The two-sided solar disk, one side covered in radiant gold, symbolizing daylight, the other in dark bronze representing night, indicates that they closely observed the daily cycle of light and darkness. If true, this could be one of the earliest cosmological models in Europe, predating written Norse mythology by centuries, and reflecting a primitive yet remarkably sophisticated understanding of celestial patterns. Some scholars believe that the sun chariot was not merely a symbol, but the ultimate offering that a community dedicated to the sun deity during times of crisis. Its burial deep within a bog, a sacred space where ancient people deposited their most important ritual gifts, suggests that it was regarded as a holy object meant to be returned to the supernatural realm. Many archaeologists argue that such a ceremony may have taken place during periods of climate instability, poor harvests, or unusual environmental conditions. In those moments, The community would have been compelled to sacrifice a precious, exquisitely crafted, and unique artifact in hopes of restoring the balance of sunlight seasons and divine protection from the sun god. The third theory places the sun chariot within the context of ceremonial processions. With wheels that can rotate, it's possible that priests moved it across an altar during solstices times when ancient people believed the sun's power shifted or renewed. The act of moving the sun may have symbolized guiding cosmic order and maintaining the world's cyclical balance. Another perspective suggests that the sun chariot once belonged to an elite class that held supreme religious authority, perhaps a high priest or a leader with a semi-mythical role within the community. Possessing the solar chariot might have been equivalent to holding the power to interpret cosmic signs, turning its owner into a bridge between humanity and the supernatural forces. If this hypothesis is correct, the sun chariot was not only a ritual object, but also a symbol of authority within a sacred social hierarchy that has long vanished, leaving behind only faint traces of its existence through this enigmatic artifact. The most debated hypothesis proposes that the sun chariot may have functioned as a primitive solar calendar used by ancient Scandinavians to observe and predict natural cycles. The golden side represents daytime, while the darker bronze side symbolizes night, two alternating states suggesting the cyclical movement of time. Some scholars believe that by rotating or adjusting the position of the solar disk during rituals, they could track seasonal transitions, determine planting periods, or select appropriate dates for important ceremonies. However, the absence of numerical markers or measurable mechanisms means this idea remains speculative. Still, it opens the possibility that ancient people were attempting to understand and regulate time through symbolic and conceptually complex means. The lack of written records, absence of consistent symbols, and missing historical context mean that every hypothesis is only a fragment of a larger puzzle. This is what makes the bronze sun chariot of Trundholm one of the most captivating mysteries of Northern European archaeology. It is familiar because it relates to the sun, a universal symbol of life, yet completely alien in form, meaning, and purpose. The sun chariot is more than a bronze figurine. It is a message from a vanished culture, a glimpse into a cosmic worldview with no surviving heirs. It is the shadow of rituals never recorded, of beliefs that lived only in the memories of ancient people. And the question, what was it truly used for, continues to echo across time, like a secret the sun itself refuses to reveal. The Phrygian bronze cauldrons emerged like ghosts of the ancient world, massive, silent, and cloaked in mystery, resting deep within the burial mounds of Anatolia. No one expected these seemingly lifeless bronze shells to be the gateway into a vanished civilization. But the moment archaeologists laid their hands on the cold metal rims, they realized these were not mere objects. They were sacred symbols of power, ritual, and metaphysical belief. Each cauldron feels as though it carries the final breath of a long-extinguished world, a coded message the Phrygians left behind for future generations. And the deeper we dig, the clearer it becomes. The truth hidden within these cauldrons is far greater than anything history has recorded. What do you think these massive Phrygian cauldrons were truly used for? Share your thoughts. In the comments below, your theory might uncover a piece of the mystery. The Phrygian bronze cauldrons astonish researchers from the very first glance, thanks to their immense scale, nearly 1 meter in diameter, forged from solid bronze, yet remarkably thin, uniform, and unbelievably durable. This raises a major question in archaeology. How could a civilization over 3,000 years ago manipulate such massive amounts of metal when most surrounding cultures could produce only much smaller objects? Their craftsmanship deepens the mystery even further. The rims are perfectly hammered, the surface is smooth and seamless, revealing no trace of welding or joining. Some cauldrons were even forged entirely from a single enormous sheet of bronze, a technique considered far beyond typical Iron Age standards. This near-perfect level of refinement has led many scholars to believe that the Phrygians possessed an advanced metallurgical knowledge that has since been lost, or that they developed a unique forging method unlike anything known in any other civilization of their era. What fascinates researchers most are the mythological motifs carved onto the rims and handles. Bull heads, lion heads, and hybrid creatures like griffins, all hallmarks of Phrygian mythology, particularly linked to the mother goddess Cybele, the supreme deity of the region. These figures were not merely decorative, they functioned as divine seals believed to protect or sanctify the rituals performed around the cauldron. Some cauldrons discovered in royal tombs even contained traces of fermented wine honey herbs and grains, suggesting a ritual drink akin to celestial beer found in other ancient cultures. The discovery of these cauldrons inside the tomb of King Midas further reinforces that they were not everyday utensils. They were placed alongside wooden furniture, banquet tables, bronze cups, and ceremonial items. This supports the theory that the cauldrons were part of a farewell ritual, guiding the royal soul to the afterlife through sacred feasting, serving as a symbolic vessel for spiritual transition. Yet the greatest mystery lies in understanding their true purpose. Despite numerous theories, none can fully account for all features. The cauldrons are too large for daily use, too refined for simple practicality, and appear exclusively in socially significant contexts within Phrygian society. This is the question that has haunted archaeologists for decades, and the reason these cauldrons have become one of the most hotly debated artifacts in ancient Anatolia. Some scholars believe that the Phrygian bronze cauldrons were not merely ritual objects, but symbolic representations of the cosmic womb within the cult of the mother goddess, Cybele, the primordial source of all life. From this perspective, the cauldron served as a vessel that received the soul of the deceased, allowing it to enter a new cycle of rebirth in the afterlife. Fascinatingly, many cauldrons contain traces of organic substances such as sacred wine honey and herbal infusions, materials commonly associated with purification and regeneration rituals in ancient cultures. Their placement in royal tombs further strengthens the idea that these cauldrons functioned as symbolic gateways, helping the soul detach from the earthly world and return to the divine realm, reflecting the Phrygian belief in the eternal cycle of life. Many of the motifs carved onto the bodies and handles of the cauldrons, especially the mythic creatures associated with the mother goddess Cybele, have led researchers to believe that these vessels once played a central role in sacred wine offering rituals. This ceremony was essential for seeking protection, fertility, and prosperous harvests from the supreme Phrygian deity. Chemical analysis has revealed traces of grape wine honey and fermented grains, ingredients comparable to the ritual beverages commonly used throughout the ancient Near East. Notably, the presence of these cauldrons in royal tombs suggests that the ritual was not purely religious, but also a political instrument, used to assert the divine authority of the king and emphasize the ruling family's direct connection to Cybele. The diversity in the design of Phrygian bronze cauldrons, from three-handled and four-handled forms to versions adorned with bull or lion heads, has led many scholars to believe that they carried social or hierarchical significance. Each style may have represented a rank, a specific ritual function, or even a powerful lineage within Phrygian society. If so, these cauldrons were not merely ritual objects, but symbols of authority, much like crowns or royal seals. Their presence in noble burials suggests that they served to affirm the identity and status of their owners, reflecting the complex power structure of this ancient civilization. Every cauldron differs in ornamentation, proportion, and design. If they were meant only for boiling or storing wine, why create such diverse, personalized forms? This inconsistency suggests that each cauldron may have held personalized symbolic meaning, functioning as a clan emblem or a royal identifier. To this day, no surviving Phrygian text is clear enough to explain the true purpose of these cauldrons, nor is there any ritual description or myth detailed enough to offer real clues. Modern scholars are forced to rely on chemical residues, ambiguous symbols, and archaeological context to speculate about their actual function. This very obscurity is what makes the Phrygian bronze cauldrons one of the most captivating archaeological mysteries in Western Asia. They are undeniably real, yet their purpose remains undefinable. They display exceptional metallurgical skill, yet the origins of that technology have long been lost. They are clearly connected to ritual, yet no one knows what the ritual was. Whether they were offering vessels, instruments of rebirth, symbols of authority, or something entirely different, these cauldrons remain silent and enigmatic, reminding us that whole belief systems and worldviews once existed now, reduced to fragments we can no longer decipher. Perhaps it is this very incomprehensibility that has elevated the Phrygian bronze cauldrons into a legend of archaeology. Long before modern maps, legal documents, or land registries existed, the Babylonians created something far stranger: small stones that seemed to carry the power of the entire cosmos. They called them kuduru, often loosely translated as boundary stones, but that is only the surface. Anyone who has ever studied them knows this simple truth: not a single kuduru has ever been found standing on an actual boundary, and their true function goes far beyond the idea of marking land. Hidden within their modest shapes are terrifying curses, intricately encoded divine symbols, legal inscriptions intertwined with astronomy and a purpose that archaeologists still cannot agree on. And this unusual combination opens a question that stretches across more than 3,000 years of history. What were the kuduru truly created for? What do you think the kuduru were truly created for? Share your thoughts in the comments below. On the surface, kuduru are stone artifacts shaped like pillars, ovoid forms, or arched stelae. The Babylonians carved dense Akkadian inscriptions onto them, along with rows of divine symbols representing the major gods of the Mesopotamian pantheon. Although they were originally thought to be ancient land deeds recording land grants, field boundaries, and ownership rights, growing archaeological evidence makes this interpretation increasingly problematic. A major anomaly appears: not a single kuduru has ever been found in an actual field where one would expect a boundary marker to stand. Instead, most were buried in temples, stored in the sanctuaries of gods, or hidden deep beneath palace floors. If kuduru were true boundary markers, why were none placed in the fields? If they were merely land documents, why bury them in temples? And if they were only legal records, why do they contain dense layers of divine symbols with complex encoded structures? A kuduru always contains two main sections: text and imagery. The text portion consists of long Akkadian inscriptions describing a king granting land to an individual or a family, recording the recipient's name, the location of the land, surrounding neighbors, irrigation canals, witnesses' terms of ownership, and most importantly, the curse section placed upon anyone who dared violate the land grant. These curses are infamous for their severity, forming some of the most terrifying spiritual punishments in ancient legal history. The Babylonians did not threaten violators merely with civil law. They invoked the wrath of the entire pantheon: blindness, plague, erasure from the memory of the living being, swallowed into the underworld, or abandonment by every god. This transforms the kuduru from a simple administrative document into a sacred covenant, merging royal authority with divine enforcement. The carved imagery on the kuduru is even more mysterious than the inscriptions, for it contains a carefully structured system of divine symbols arranged in clear hierarchical layers, almost like a genealogy of the gods, etched directly into stone. Each symbol carries a sacred meaning, Enlil's horned crown represents supreme authority. The blazing solar disk of Shamash evokes righteous judgment. The crescent of sin symbolizes cosmic cycles. The serpent dragon, Mushashu of Marduk, embodies protective power, and the sharp blade of Nergal is linked to death and warfare. Yet what astonishes scholars is not just the meaning of each individual symbol, but the way they are combined into a unified structure of power, where law, religion, astronomy, and royal ideology merge into a single artifact. This complex fusion elevates the kuduru far beyond a typical legal document, transforming it into an object with multiple layers of meaning so intricate that its true purpose can no longer be explained through any single field alone. Another intriguing aspect that has drawn the attention of scholars is the presence of astronomical symbols on the kuduru. Beyond the sun and moon, many stones feature stars, constellations, or markings related to lunar cycles, elements commonly found in Babylonian astronomical records. This has strengthened the theory that the kuduru may have functioned as a sacred calendar, possibly used to determine the proper timing for land grant rituals or oaths sworn before the gods. Even more striking is that some of these astronomical symbols appear exclusively on kuduru and are completely absent from other legal texts, leading many researchers to believe they encode a special layer of knowledge accessible only to Babylonian priests or the elite class. A major point of debate among archaeologists concerns the carving techniques used by the Babylonians on basalt, one of the hardest stones of the ancient world. Yet many kuduru bear deep, sharp, and astonishingly uniform engravings, as if they were crafted with advanced metal tools that did not exist at the time. The delicate line work, the precise control of depth, and the flawless placement of symbols suggest that the craftsmen possess skills far beyond the standard of their era. This raises an unsettling question. What tools did they actually use? Bronze stone, or a stoneworking technique that has since been lost? It is precisely this unusual level of craftsmanship that makes the kuduru so mysterious, as though they preserve a technological capability more sophisticated than what history typically attributes to their time. What makes the kuduru one of the most perplexing mysteries of Babylonian civilization is the question of their true purpose. All the anomalies where they were found the intricate system of divine symbols, the severe curses, and the advanced carving techniques converge toward a single central question: what were the kuduru actually created for? After centuries of study, scholars have been divided into three major interpretations, each explaining only part of the phenomenon and none offering a fully satisfactory answer. The first interpretation views the kuduru as official land grant documents stored in temples so that ownership would fall under divine protection. This theory accounts for the land grant inscriptions and the curses, but it does not explain why the Babylonians used such excessively complex symbols, or why they carved them into extremely hard basalt, a material unnecessary for ordinary administrative records. If they were merely ancient land titles, why would they require an entire hierarchy of powerful gods to serve as witnesses? The second theory suggests that the kuduru were sacred ritual objects used in oath-taking ceremonies, where the land recipients swore before the gods to honor the terms of possession. This explains the curses and the ritual nature of the inscriptions, but it does not clarify why some kuduru contain only divine symbols with no mention of land at all. Even more puzzling are the astronomical symbols, moons, constellations, lunar cycles, which fit poorly into a simple oath ritual. The third and most debated theory proposes that the kuduru were multi-layered, encoded artifacts integrating legal ritual and astronomical functions into a single structure. From this viewpoint, a kuduru not only recorded land ownership, but also served as a form of cosmic certification, declaring that the king's authority to grant land was sanctioned by the gods. Each divine symbol acted as a sacred seal, affirming that the celestial order itself supported the decree. When an individual received land, They were not simply taking possession of property, they were entering a triadic relationship binding humans, gods, and royal power. Thus, burying the kuduru inside temples symbolized that the gods were the ultimate overseers of property, not humans. This unusual convergence of law, religion, and astronomy is precisely why the true purpose of the kudururu remains unresolved. Each theory explains only fragments of the evidence, and none can encompass the entire phenomenon, making the kudururu one of the most enigmatic artifacts the Babylonians ever left behind. No matter which theory is correct, one thing is certain: the kuduru are not mere stones. They are legal, spiritual, and esoteric constructs carefully engineered to preserve multiple layers of meaning. Even today, scholars still cannot fully decode them. And as of now, the question, what were the kuduru truly used for, remains unanswered, securing its place as one of the most enduring mysteries of ancient Babylon. In the moment Mount Vesuvius erupted in 79 CE, Pompeii was not simply destroyed, an entire ancient world was frozen in the fury of nature. More than 2,000 years later, as layers of scorching ash were brushed aside, archaeologists uncovered sites so haunting they felt unreal loaves of bread, still holding their shape-painted walls, whose colors had not yet faded. But what truly made them stop in silence was not the art nor the remnants of daily life. It was a complete set of surgical instruments, lying perfectly preserved inside the home of a Pompeian physician, so intact you might think it had just been carried out of a modern operating room. Razor-sharp blades, metal clamps with intricate locking mechanisms, slender probes nearly identical to 20th century dental tools. Their existence raises a question that continues to baffle scholars today. What kind of surgeries were the Romans performing that required instruments, this sophisticated instruments that look almost modern? A question that opens the door to one of the greatest mysteries in the history of ancient medicine. What kind of surgeries do you think the Romans were really performing with these tools? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The surgical instruments of Pompeii astonish researchers not only because they are 2,000 years old, but because they appear almost impossibly modern. The bronze scalpels were sharpened so finely that they could slice through soft tissue with minimal force. The slender uniform probes look nearly identical to 20th century dental tools. Many of the forceps even feature micro-locking mechanisms, a detail most people assume only emerged with modern mechanical engineering. Most striking of all are the bronze gynecological speculums equipped with rotating gear wheels that allowed precise adjustment, demonstrating advanced mechanical craftsmanship. Even the surgical needles share the same curvature, thickness, and bending points found in modern designs. Contemporary doctors who have examined these tools admit that many of them have barely changed in design over 2 millennia, turning Pompeii's instrument set into an ancient medical mystery that science simply cannot ignore. Among all the medical artifacts discovered in Pompeii, the metal speculum is the most astonishing due to its sophistication, far beyond its era. The device consists of 2 tightly fitted metal blades, a sturdy rotating shaft, and most notably, a system of small gears that allows the opening to be adjusted with precision. Such a complex mechanical structure required deep anatomical knowledge of the female body and highly skilled metalworking, something exceptionally rare 2,000 years ago. The very existence of this speculum forces scholars to ask a profound question. What kind of intricate procedures were Pompeii's physicians performing that required a tool so similar to modern medical design? Within Pompeii's surgical toolkit, the double-bladed scalpels stand out as a striking example of unexpectedly advanced surgical thinking for the ancient world. One curved blade was used for making gentle incisions through soft tissue, while the sharper straight blade was designed to handle thicker, more resistant layers. This combination shows that Roman physicians were not merely cutting at random, They understood the properties of different tissues and selected the appropriate tool, accordingly reflecting a surgical mindset that feels remarkably modern for their time. Pompeii's surgical kit did not stop at scalpels or basic clamps. It included an entire system of specialized instruments, revealing a level of medical sophistication far beyond what is typically imagined. They possessed bone levers, bone saws, and small drill bits for orthopedic procedures, bladder stone crushing tools for urological surgery, tissue forceps, and gum scraping tools for dental work, along with finely crafted surgical needles capable of closing deep incisions. Even more intriguing, several instruments have such distinctive shapes that experts believe they may have been used to remove tumors or diseased tissue, suggesting that Pompeii's physicians performed complex procedures in obstetrics, urology, orthopedics, and dentistry far more advanced than simple everyday treatments. Within the Pompei surgical kit, the most perplexing group consists of instruments that resemble no known medical tools from the ancient world. Some metal rods end in spiral-shaped tips that look like drilling devices, yet they are far too delicate to have been used crudely. Certain clamp-like tools shaped like crab claws do not correspond to any human anatomical structure, while multi-directional hooks have such unusual angles and proportions that their purpose cannot be determined. Archaeologists admit that 10 to 15 of these artifacts are completely unexplainable, and the strangest part is that none of them appear in any surviving Roman medical texts. Among the discoveries associated with Pompeii's surgical toolkit, the most startling is the presence of anesthetic residues found inside small glass jars placed beside the instruments. Analysis revealed traces of opium, mandrake, and henbane, three powerful medicinal plants known for inducing numbness, drowsiness, and significant pain relief. This indicates that Roman physicians did not rely solely on a patient's endurance. They were actually administering anesthesia before performing surgery. Such practice was extraordinarily rare in the ancient world, where most civilizations performed crude operations with little to no pain control. The existence of these substances suggests that the physicians of Pompeii may have carried out far more complex procedures, ones that required the patient to be immobilized or fully insensate, far beyond the typical medical capabilities of their era. All of the above is only the tip of the iceberg. What makes this surgical kit legendary is the greatest mystery. What kinds of surgeries were the Romans actually performing? Why did they possess instruments similar to those used for abdominal surgery, deep tissue removal, or tumor extraction, while ancient texts rarely mention procedures of such complexity? Were these tools used merely for treating minor wounds, or were they involved in highly advanced surgeries that for unknown reasons were never recorded? Some scholars believe that Pompeii may once have possessed a highly advanced surgical tradition, deeply influenced by Greco-Roman medicine, yet far more developed than what surviving texts describe. The presence of sophisticated tools such as metal speculums, specialized tissue-cutting forceps, double-bladed scalpels, and orthopedic devices suggests that Pompeian physicians understood human anatomy in depth and knew how to intervene far inside the body. These findings have led many researchers to suspect that the city may have hosted an advanced medical school or surgical tradition that vanished entirely after Pompeii was buried beneath the catastrophic eruption of Vesuvius. A bold hypothesis suggests that Pompeii's physicians may have secretly performed human dissections, even though such practices were forbidden in many parts of the Roman Empire. The evidence comes from long, slender, razor-sharp instruments that would be unsuitable for operating on living patients. Instead, they closely resemble tools used to separate tissue lift organs or open body cavities during anatomical study. If these assumptions are correct, Pompeii may once have possessed a lost anatomical tradition where knowledge of the human body was examined far more thoroughly than anywhere else in the empire, a quiet, secretive science that may have been wiped out entirely when the city vanished beneath volcanic ash. The most controversial hypothesis suggests that some of the surgical instruments found in Pompeii may have belonged to a secretive medical tradition, one passed down orally rather than through written texts. Pompeii was a wealthy, open, and culturally diverse city, heavily influenced by Greek, Egyptian, and even Eastern knowledge, an environment ideal for foreign ideas to blend and evolve. Many scholars believe this cultural fusion may have produced a distinct medical lineage, sophisticated yet unofficial, shared only among a select group of physicians. The complete absence of written records describing such techniques only deepens the mystery, raising the question of whether Pompeii once possessed an entirely different system of medical knowledge, one that vanished along with the city itself. Yet the biggest question remains: if they truly performed complex surgeries, why were these techniques never documented, and what caused this knowledge to disappear entirely? Was it because Vesuvius destroyed the entire medical tradition? Did Roman society reject invasive surgery, forcing these practices to remain hidden? Or did ancient medicine once possess forms of knowledge that modern historians have yet to uncover? One thing is certain: the tools do not lie. They are real, precise, and clearly designed for specific medical actions. They force modern scholars to consider the possibility that Roman medicine was far more advanced, almost shockingly sophisticated, than we have ever imagined. And this is why the Roman surgical instruments of Pompeii remains one of the greatest ancient mysteries, a set of tools far too modern, far too perfect, yet history cannot explain what they were truly used for. Located in the Bohuslän region of Sweden, the Tanum rock carvings have long been considered one of the strangest and most perplexing prehistoric maps in Europe. Long ago, this area was a shallow sea, and it was on these stone surfaces, once smoothed by ocean waves, that the people of the Nordic Bronze Age carved thousands of images. These visual symbols, created more than 3 millennia ago, still challenge modern science. The uniqueness of Tanum lies not only in the sheer quantity of carvings, but also in their illogical, unnatural, and sometimes unrealistic nature details that have fueled archaeological debates for decades. Here, prehistoric people did more than carve stone. They carved out an entire world, a system of thought, a symbolic language that we can only partially understand today. What do you think the Tanum carvings were created to record? A ritual, a story, or a message meant for the future? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The enormous boats at Tanum are far more than simple carvings. They form a sequence of vivid scenes that seem to move across the stone. The boats curve, as if catching the wind. Rows of crew members stand tightly together, and warriors raise their axes as though ready to charge into battle. The subtlety lies in the way ancient artists carved deeper or shallower lines to create the illusion of motion, boats gliding forward, figures stepping ahead, and dancers tilting their bodies as if following a ceremonial rhythm. This shows they were not merely depicting objects, but attempting to capture action, something extraordinarily rare in prehistoric art. Such technique required exceptional observation skills and an imagination far beyond their era, making Tanum clear evidence that Bronze Age people possessed a far more advanced visual language than modern science once believed. The boats at Tanum become even more puzzling when their size far exceeds the shipbuilding capabilities of the Bronze Age. Many are carved long enough to carry dozens of people, with hulls curving like gigantic sea creatures. Yet archaeology has uncovered no evidence of any real vessels of such scale from that period. This raises an unresolved question: were these depictions based on actual boats? Or were they ceremonial vessels, imagined craft, meant to carry souls, deities, or symbolize a metaphysical journey that humans could never witness? The warriors at Tanum are controversial because they appear in unusually large numbers. They are depicted holding battle axes, standing in combat-ready postures, like a formidable army. However, excavations in the region have not uncovered a corresponding quantity of real weapons. This discrepancy raises the possibility that these figures may not represent actual warriors, but idealized icons, legendary heroes, deified ancestors, or symbolic embodiments of communal strength, rather than records of real historical battles. Then there are the giants, humanoid figures, drawn 2 or 3 times larger than normal people. They stand beside boats, warriors, and enigmatic symbols. Who were they? Exaggerated leaders, ancestral spirits, or representations of another type of being entirely? One of the most perplexing aspects of Tanum is the placement of many carvings. Some are located on steep rock faces where even modern people would struggle to stand, while others sit so close to the ground that one would need to crawl just to reach them. Still others appear on slippery, damp surfaces that seem entirely unsuitable for carving with stone tools. This raises 2 key questions. How did ancient people manage to carve in such places, and why did they choose these inconvenient locations at all? Did the landscape of Tanum change drastically over thousands of years, or was this intentional sites meant for secret rituals, or places designed for the gods to see rather than human? The circular symbols scattered throughout Tanum are among the most difficult elements to decipher. They are not limited to sun shapes or radiating disks. Many resemble miniature maps depicting concentric rings that may represent cycles of time seasons or celestial movements. Their high frequency has led many researchers to believe these are not mere decorations, but a deliberate system of symbols, possibly a form of proto-writing used by Bronze Age people to record important information. If this theory is correct, then Tanum is not simply rock art, but an entire stone library preserving the knowledge of a long-lost civilization. The deeper one studies Tanum, the stranger it becomes. Some figures have distorted body proportions, oversized heads, elongated arms, asymmetrical bodies. These may represent masked performers, people in trance states, or mythic entities believed to inhabit the spiritual world parallel to humans. The entire Tanum region contains more than 600 carving sites scattered across a wide area. This suggests it was not merely a place where travelers casually carved images. Instead, it points to a long-lasting ceremonial center or gathering place where people recorded something deeply significant, important enough to etch into stone for eternity. The greatest mystery of Tanum lies in a seemingly simple question that no one has been able to answer: what do these carvings actually represent? For centuries, scholars have proposed various interpretations, yet none are fully convincing. Some believe Tanum is a visual history book, where Bronze Age people recorded battles, rituals, myths, and the spiritual life of their community. The axe-bearing warriors, the longboats, the giant figures, and the strange ceremonial scenes could all be fragments of a larger narrative about the world they inhabited. Another group sees Tanum as an early astronomical system, the circular symbols representing the sun and cycles of time, while the boats, which appear frequently, symbolize the eternal journey of life, death, and rebirth. Some archaeologists even argue that Tanum does not depict earthly life at all, but instead illustrates the realm of the gods' giant beings as ancestors' boats, as vessels carrying souls, and ritual scenes representing humanity's connection to the cosmos. But a more radical hypothesis suggests that everything modern researchers are trying to decode may already be based on a wrong premise. Perhaps the Bronze Age artists never intended to document history. They may have been performing magical rites, carving the community's mark onto the stone to invoke prosperity, rain, or divine favor messages meant for the gods, not for future humans. And if this truly was their original intention, then all modern interpretations are merely distant projections, while the real meaning has long since vanished into the past, sealed forever within the ancient stone. Another daring theory proposes that Tanum is a lost proto-writing system, where each symbol acts as a word, each scene as a sentence, and the entire complex as a message across time. If this is true, then Tanum is not primitive art. It is a mysterious story that the Bronze Age civilization intended for the future. A story that even with all our modern technology, we still cannot unlock. And that is what makes Tanum one of humanity's greatest archaeological enigmas, for behind those simple carved lines might lie a completely different mindset, a worldview we may never fully recover. The Ark of the Covenant's location has always been considered one of humanity's greatest mysteries, not only because its whereabouts vanished entirely from historical records, but also because the true nature of this object has sparked debate for thousands of years. According to the Bible, the Ark was a sacred chest crafted by Moses under God's command, made of acacia wood and covered in pure gold, with 2 golden cherubim placed on its lid. What puzzles researchers is not its exquisite design, but the extraordinary power described in countless ancient texts. It could kill anyone who touched it, emit blinding light, produce thunder-like sounds, and even bring down the walls of Jericho. These layered descriptions make it difficult to view the Ark as a simple religious relic. It resembles some kind of mysterious energy device. Most strangely, after the Babylonians destroyed Solomon's temple around 586 BC, the Ark completely vanished, and no official document recorded where it was taken. What do you think really happened to the Ark after it vanished from history? Was it hidden, destroyed? Or does it still exist somewhere no one would ever expect? Share your thoughts in the comments below. After disappearing from Solomon's temple, the Ark of the Covenant became the center of countless theories stretching across 3 continents. One of the most famous claims suggests the Ark was secretly taken to Ethiopia, where the Church of Our Lady Mary of Zion declares it is kept inside a sealed sanctuary, guarded by a single monk for life. No one else is ever allowed to see it, making the claim both rich in religious tradition and entirely unverifiable. Meanwhile, many scholars believe the Ark lies beneath Jerusalem itself, hidden within the underground chambers and sealed rooms of the Temple Mount, an area where any excavation could spark severe political conflict, potentially burying the truth forever. Other studies point toward Mount Nebo in Jordan, where Moses is said to have viewed the Promised Land. Still others believe the Ark was concealed inside the Qumran caves near the discovery site of the Dead Sea Scrolls. Each location carries only faint traces, legends, fragmented records, or ambiguous signs. These clues are strong enough to stir suspicion, yet never clear enough to confirm anything. This very ambiguity makes the Ark unique, a relic that seems to exist everywhere, yet cannot be proven to exist in any single place. What confuses scientists even more are ancient descriptions portraying the Ark as an object capable of unusual physical interactions. Some texts describe it emitting a bluish light, vibrating slightly, or burning the hair and skin of anyone who approached, phenomena similar to electrical discharge in modern environments. The fact that the Ark seemed lightened or easier to carry suggests some form of electromagnetism or repulsive force. These details lead many researchers to ask, could the Ark have been an ancient piece of technology that modern humans can no longer replicate? Others argue that the Ark was simply a symbolic religious artifact that became exaggerated over time, with its powers recorded in the metaphorical style common to ancient writings. However, if it were merely symbolic, why does the Bible describe it with such technical detail, as if documenting a device rather than a mythical object? This question remains unsolved. Another mystery is the extremely restricted access to the Ark. Only the high priest was allowed to approach it once a year, and it was kept inside the Holy of Holies, separated by a thick veil. No one else, not even the king, could enter. This strict limitation raises questions. Were religious leaders protecting a sacred object, or hiding something dangerous. If the Ark emitted hazardous energy, such as electricity or radiation limiting access, would be logical. But if it was merely a wooden chest covered in gold, such prohibitions become harder to explain. Even carrying the Ark required a precise method. No one could touch it directly, and long wooden poles had to be inserted through its golden rings. This mirrors how modern people handle dangerous objects that may conduct electricity. These details paint a picture of the Ark not as a passive religious item, but as an object with powerful energy properties capable of harming anyone who interacted with it incorrectly. For centuries, countless individuals and organizations attempted to find the Ark. From medieval expeditions to Nazi agents during World War II to Soviet operatives in the Cold War, many searched, but none found reliable clues. Strangely, despite the Ark's fame, no archaeological evidence has ever confirmed its physical existence. No wood fragments, no gold plating, no life-sized replicas from the ancient world, and no records describing its destruction. This complete absence makes the Ark one of the rare objects that exists only through texts and legends. Such ambiguity has led some to propose that the Ark never existed at all and was instead a theological construct meant to symbolize divine authority or codify the covenant between humanity and God. However, all mysteries about its location pale in comparison to the most important question: what was the Ark of God truly? This is the core of the entire enigma. Some believe it was a sacred vessel that held the Ten Commandments, embodying God's presence on earth. Others lean towards scientific interpretations, proposing that the Ark was a massive capacitor, an ancient generator, or even an energy weapon, misunderstood by ancient people and described using religious language. More radical theories suggest it could be a remnant of a lost civilization, or even an artifact of extraterrestrial origin that early humans discovered and worshipped. Still others maintain that the Ark was purely symbolic and its powers were exaggerated to teach moral or religious lessons. But if it was only symbolic, why are the descriptions so technical and specific? And why is its location concealed so thoroughly that no one can verify its existence? This question, what the Ark truly was, is what makes it an unsolvable mystery. If it were just a sacred relic, it would have been clearly preserved or replicated. If it were ancient technology, its unusual behavior lights, thunder-destructive force would make sense. If it were mythical, why are the descriptions so detailed? And if it never existed, why do so many civilizations and texts claim it did? This paradox lies at the center of every debate and is the reason the Ark remains the most sought-after yet unfound artifact in human history. Perhaps it was destroyed or hidden forever. Or perhaps it still exists somewhere deep in a forgotten cave, sealed inside an underground chamber, or even in a place no one would ever think to search. Until the Ark is found, it will remain the ultimate symbol of ancient mystery, suspended between mythology, science, and history, and that is precisely why it has never had and may never have a definitive answer. When the Rosetta Stone was discovered in 1799 by French soldiers near the town of Rachid Rosetta, no one could have imagined that this broken slab of granodiorite would become one of the most important archaeological finds in human history. It became the key that finally unlocked the long silent language of ancient Egypt, ending centuries of mystery surrounding hieroglyphs. But what most people never realize is that the stone we see today is incomplete. A huge portion of its original surface is missing, gone forever lost to erosion destruction or deliberate removal. And in those missing sections lie questions that scholars still cannot answer even after 2 centuries of study. What do you think was written on the missing pieces of the Rosetta Stone? Share your theory in the comments below. I'm really curious to hear your thoughts. Although the surviving Rosetta Stone contains 3 different scripts, hieroglyphic, Demotic, and Greek, the degree of damage among them is far from equal. The Greek section is almost completely intact, allowing the text to be read in full. The Demotic section is chipped and cracked, but still reconstructible to a reasonable extent. However, the hieroglyphic section, the most sacred, symbolic, and religiously significant script, suffered the greatest destruction. More than 1/3 of its lines have been obliterated, leaving only fragmented traces behind. This creates a profound paradox. The very portion that could have given us the clearest insight into Egyptian ideology, ritual practices, and the way they defined the pharaoh's divine authority is also the section most severely lost. This absence makes a complete understanding of the decree impossible, leaving a void that modern scholarship can never fully fill. What remains on the stone is a decree issued in 196 BCE honoring Pharaoh Ptolemy V. It describes tax exemptions, donations to temples, and royal privileges. But the structure of such decrees in Egypt was highly standardized. They typically began with grand symbolic introductions, divine titles, epithets of the pharaoh, and ceremonial language acknowledging the gods. Those openings, the most religious and politically charged parts, are exactly the sections missing from the hieroglyphic text on the Rosetta Stone. The entire top left portion of the stone, where these sacred declarations would normally appear, has been shattered. For decades, scholars have debated what the missing sections of the Rosetta Stone might have contained, and many believe the loss is far more significant than a few lines of royal praise. Some argue that these fragments may have held extended affirmations of Ptolemy V's divine legitimacy, declarations linking him to sacred bloodlines or celestial order expressed in ritualized language unique to the priesthood. Others propose that the hieroglyphic version once included cosmic metaphors, mythological references, or ceremonial formulas deliberately absent from the Greek translation, which was written for clarity and administrative use. This difference in purpose fuels the theory that the Greek text was a public, simplified rendition, while the hieroglyphic inscription, the very part most severely damaged, carried symbolic nuances, religious depth, and political messaging now forever erased. Because of this, the missing lines may have shaped meaning in ways we can no longer reconstruct, leaving scholars to debate whether the stone once contained secrets too complex or too sacred to survive the centuries. One of the most troubling mysteries surrounding the Rosetta Stone lies in the complete disappearance of its missing fragments. Despite the stone being unearthed in a partially intact fort, not a single genuine shard has ever been recovered from the site or surrounding regions. This absence is striking because large stone fragments rarely vanish without trace. Archaeologists have repeatedly surveyed the area across many decades, using improved excavation techniques and broader search perimeters, yet every attempt has yielded nothing. This has fueled the theory that the stone was already damaged long before Napoleon's soldiers discovered it, suggesting a history of displacement and repurposing. Some researchers propose that the slab was torn from the wall of a temple or administrative center during a turbulent period, then broken apart either for transport or for reuse as building material. Others argue the fractures and chisel marks indicate a deliberate act, perhaps an effort to erase politically sensitive or religiously significant portions of the text. Over centuries, the fragments could have been scattered across multiple structures, buried deep within ancient foundations, or even destroyed during renovations in later eras. The result is a void that archaeology cannot fill, a missing third of one of history's most important inscription lost so completely that its disappearance is itself a profound enigma. Some suggest that priests may have been responsible. During periods of political turmoil, especially under foreign rulers, sacred inscriptions were sometimes vandalized to erase names or titles seen as illegitimate. Others propose that later builders broke the stone for practical reasons because granodiorite was durable and useful for walls or foundations. If those pieces ended up in ancient foundations, they might still be buried deep, under modern Egyptian buildings, inaccessible and unidentifiable. The biggest challenge is that without the missing passages, the text will never be fully known. Even with our modern understanding of hieroglyphs, even with high-resolution scans and linguistic reconstruction, scholars can only guess what those lost lines originally said. The Greek version helps, but does not fully replace the hieroglyphic nuances. Egyptian texts often contained symbolic metaphors, religious concepts, or ritual invocations that did not appear in the Greek translation. This means the missing lines could have held context that fundamentally changes our understanding of the decree. This is the part that ignites imagination, because the top section of the stone, the portion containing hieroglyphs, is where ancient Egyptians normally placed the most powerful and sacred information. It was the space reserved for the divine lineage of the pharaoh, mythological associations, declarations linking the ruler to gods such as Ra-Horus or Amun, ceremonial affirmations of cosmic balance known as Ma'at, and the magical or ritual phrasing used only in sacred religious texts. The missing pieces could have included unique royal epithets, never recorded anywhere else, ritual formulations specific to Ptolemy Fief's coronation that have vanished from all other monuments, or even symbolic descriptions of a political crisis, softened in the Greek translation. They might also have contained a sacred iconographic panel images of gods' offerings or ritual scenes, now erased without trace. Some fringe historians even speculate that the lost fragments held dangerous or forbidden knowledge, esoteric information later regimes attempted to destroy. Scholars do not accept this claim, but the truth is undeniable. We genuinely do not know, and that uncertainty fuels the legend. The greatest irony is that the Rosetta Stone, the artifact that unlocked the secrets of an entire civilization, still hides secrets of its own. It is both a key and a lock, a revelation and an enigma. We celebrate it as the tool that revived a long-dead language, yet its most sacred lines remain forever silent. The inscriptions, meant to glorify a king and preserve his authority, now stand as a reminder of how fragile human memory truly is. In the end, the mystery of the Rosetta Stone's missing pieces is not simply about what words have been lost, but about the realization that history is forever incomplete. No matter how much we uncover, some truths will always remain buried, and sometimes the most fascinating mysteries are the ones that leave just enough behind to spark the imagination, but never enough to close the case. For more than a century, archaeologists and epigraphers have struggled to pull meaning from the sharp geometric lines carved into ancient clay tablets of southwestern Iran. Known today, the Elamite linear script, this mysterious writing system stands as one of humanity's greatest undeciphered codes. It emerged around the 3rd millennium BCE in the land of Elam, a powerful yet often overshadowed civilization that existed in parallel with Sumer, Akkad, Babylon, and Egypt. And yet, despite Elam's long and influential presence in the ancient Near East, its own written voice remains locked away behind a wall of symbols no scholar has yet managed to fully understand. The deeper researchers attempt to go, the stranger this system becomes, almost as if the script is deliberately resisting anyone who tries to unravel it. What do you think linear Elamite is hiding? History, mythology, or an entire forgotten civilization? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Unlike the cuneiform script of Mesopotamia, which spread widely and was adopted by many cultures, linear Elamite appears to stand alone. Its symbols do not resemble the wedge-shaped strokes of Sumer, nor the pictorial beauty of Egyptian hieroglyphs. Instead, the script is constructed from thin strokes, angled lines, triangular shapes, and distinctive, almost minimalist geometric forms. Each sign feels intentional, yet enigmatic, as if the scribes of ancient Elam built a visual language governed by a logic no other culture shared. It is this uniqueness that has captivated scholars. Linear Elamite is not simply a variation of another writing system. It may represent an entirely independent intellectual creation, a linguistic framework born solely from Elamite thought. Over the years, archaeologists have documented more than 200 distinct symbols, yet even this number brings confusion rather than clarity. Some symbols appear frequently, others only once. Some are grouped in repeating sequences, possibly titles, royal names, ritual phrases, or administrative formulas, yet the absence of long inscriptions prevents experts from determining which. Without bilingual texts, without extended narratives, and without consistent contextual clues, every attempt at decipherment collapses. Unlike the iconic Rosetta Stone that unlocked the secrets of Egyptian hieroglyphs, Linear Elamite has no such key. There is no known inscription that presents the same message in both Linear Elamite and a deciphered script. As a result, scholars cannot triangulate the meaning of signs, cannot confirm patterns, and cannot validate hypotheses. Every theory remains suspended in uncertainty. Worse still, most surviving inscriptions are painfully short, sometimes only a handful of signs carved onto ritual vessels, small clay tablets, stone plaques, or ceremonial objects. These objects suggest that Linear Elamite may not have been used for everyday record-keeping like cuneiform. Instead, it may have served a more restricted purpose, perhaps a religious language, a ceremonial script, or a form of sacred communication accessible only to elites. This limited usage makes decipherment even more difficult. A script used primarily for ritual contexts may contain formulaic or symbolic phrases rather than practical information, making statistical analysis less effective. And yet, even with so little to work with, the script refuses to disappear from academic memory. Every few years, a new study claims to have decoded portions of it, usually identifying a few royal names or associating certain signs with syllables. But none of these proposals gain universal acceptance. Some researchers argue that the script is largely phonetic. Others insist it is logographic. Others propose a hybrid system. None of them can prove their model across all known inscriptions. Each time a theory is introduced, another scholar can find inconsistencies that unravel the entire model. As a result, Linear Elamite remains one of the most intellectually frustrating writing systems ever discovered. But perhaps the reason it remains so resistant has nothing to do with complexity and everything to do with what lies behind it. Because beyond the scholarly debate and the linguistic puzzles stands the central haunting question, the one that turns this script from a mere academic curiosity into one of humanity's greatest archaeological mysteries. What if Linear Elamite is the last surviving doorway into a forgotten civilization whose history we barely know? This is the possibility that gives the script its power. If deciphered, Linear Elamite may not merely reveal administrative lists or temple inventories. It could instead rewrite our understanding of ancient Iran and the earliest civilizations of the Near East. The Elamites were contemporaries of the Sumerians, and some evidence even suggests they may predate them. They engaged in diplomacy, warfare, trade, and cultural exchange with Mesopotamia for more than 2,000 years. Yet the story of who they were, what they believed, how they understood the cosmos, how they governed, how they worshipped, remains mostly silent because we cannot read their original voice. The possibility is astonishing. Linear Elamite may contain the earliest recorded myths of Iran, the genealogies of ancient kings, descriptions of ceremonies, long-forgotten accounts of interactions with Sumerian and Akkadian rulers, explanations of religious symbols, and even foundational ideas about the structure of their society. It may preserve versions of stories predating the epic traditions of the region. It may encode spiritual or cosmological concepts that would expand our knowledge of human belief systems. Even simple decipherments, names, titles, dates, could radically alter timelines, redraw dynastic charts, and reshape our understanding of power in the ancient world. What makes this even more dramatic is the possibility that Linear Elamite represents not just a writing system, but the key to an entire linguistic family whose origins are still mysterious. The Elamite language is not clearly related to any known language group. Some scholars propose links to Dravidian languages of South India. Others argue for distant connections elsewhere. But without reading the early script, we cannot test these ideas. Deciphering Linear Elamite could reveal whether the Elamites were an isolated linguistic island or part of a much older migratory wave. It could help track how populations moved across the ancient Near East, unlocking a deeper understanding of the earliest cultural networks. This is why many researchers consider Linear Elamite not merely a writing problem, but a civilization-defining mystery. Each undeciphered sign may represent a fragment of identity, an identity that the passage of millennia has nearly erased. The symbols might contain the world-view of a people who stood at the crossroads of ancient empires, but whose voice has faded into near silence. If we could read their script, we might restore that voice. And so the greatest mystery of all emerges was Linear Elamite, the script of a civilization whose heritage has been lost to time, waiting to be rediscovered. Is it possible that Elam's earliest kings, priests, myths, philosophies, and rituals still survive, encoded within these strokes, awaiting one brilliant breakthrough? Could this script reveal stories older than the legends of Mesopotamia? Could it reshape our understanding of how writing itself evolved? These questions keep the script alive in academic imagination. Not because we know the answers, but because the potential answers are so monumental. If Linear Elamite can be deciphered, it would not simply clarify one corner of ancient history. It might change everything we think we know about the dawn of civilization. It could be the missing chapter, the silent partner to Sumer and Egypt, the forgotten third pillar of the ancient Near Eastern world. And until the day someone finally cracks its code, the Linear Elamite script will continue to stand as a silent guardian of secrets that may redefine our origins. Among the countless achievements of the Inca civilization, the rope bridges woven from grass and suspended across the deep gorges of the Andes remain one of the most puzzling enigmas for modern archaeologists. At first glance, they appear simple bundles of totora grass-braided plant fibers twisted into crude cables and woven together to form a walkway. But upon closer examination, the world discovered that behind this rustic appearance lies a highly advanced engineering system, so advanced that it seems impossible it was created without metal, without wheels, without blueprints, and without any written system to record construction rules. So where did this technique truly come from? And why did it appear almost fully developed during the peak of the Inca Empire? What do you think? Do these rope bridges come from Inca genius, or from a forgotten civilization we no longer remember? Share your theory in the comments below. The Inca rope bridge system was not merely a collection of isolated structures stretched across mountain ravines, but an essential component of the vast Capacnan network, over 40,000 kilometers of road connecting the highlands of Colombia to the deserts of Chile and the valleys of Argentina. Along the sheer slopes of the Andes, these bridges functioned as strategic arteries, allowing armies food supplies, goods, and information to move with remarkable speed across an empire that did not use the wheel. What surprises researchers even more is that the Spanish, despite their advanced European engineering of the time, were forced to rely on these very bridges because they could not replace them with their own designs. The knots, the rope twisting methods, the reinforcement techniques, the standardized curvature, together they form a level of technical consistency so precise that modern engineers still ask, how could a civilization without metal achieve such engineering perfection? One of the strangest aspects of the Inca rope bridges lies in the very material they used. Bundles of totora and ichu, two types of living plant fibers that continuously absorb moisture, swell, shrink, and then rapidly decay within just 1 to 2 years. This meant that no bridge could ever last long. Instead of repairing individual sections, entire communities had to reweave the bridge from scratch every single year. The reconstruction was not merely labor, it became a sacred ritual where engineering and spirituality blended seamlessly. Astonishingly, even a small mistake within the hundreds of meters of intricately twisted ropes could cause the whole structure to collapse the moment someone stepped onto it. So how was this knowledge preserved so perfectly for centuries when each bridge was essentially a brand new creation? Furthermore, no other civilization in the Andes used a similar technique, and archaeology has uncovered no primitive or experimental versions predating the Inca. The technique seems to have appeared suddenly fully formed and mysteriously complete, as if it never went through any natural evolutionary development. One of the most difficult elements to explain in Inca rope bridge engineering lies in their knotting system, the very heart that determined the strength and stability of the entire structure. Studies show that many of their knot types bear no resemblance to any known knotting traditions in modern maritime construction or expedition practices. Some knots possess unique structures that allow force to be evenly distributed across the fibers, reducing twisting, preventing breakage, and maintaining stability even as the load constantly shifts. When engineers ran computer simulations, they found that Inca rope bridges could withstand seismic vibrations far better than many rigid stone bridges of medieval Europe, an essential advantage in the ever-shaking Andes. This raises a profound question: was this simply the result of accumulated experience, the intuition of skilled craftsmen, or did the Inca once possess a form of mechanical or material science knowledge that has since vanished from history? The rituals surrounding bridge construction deepen the mystery even more. 5 days before rebuilding the bridge, the entire village would begin braiding the ropes. Women wove the smaller cords, men twisted them into larger cables, and the Chakramayok masters of the craft inspected each bundle to ensure quality. The construction was accompanied by offerings to Pachamama, ceremonial chants and blessings. This was not merely engineering, it was a sacred tradition. And although this entire process was repeated annually and preserved the skill flawlessly, it still does not explain why the technique appeared fully developed from the very beginning. A major mystery surrounding the Inca rope bridges lies in the hypothesis that their construction techniques may have been encoded within quipu, the knotted string system traditionally used for recording numerical data. The Incas left no blueprints, no technical symbols, and no written manuals. Yet quipu appears throughout the empire, with highly complex knot structures that vary by position, color, and twisting style. Some scholars suspect that behind these sequences of knots lies more than arithmetic, perhaps a body of technical knowledge that has since been lost. If true, the secrets of calculating rope tension, distributing force, or standardizing bridge weaving may be hidden within a knot-based language the world has yet to decipher. This possibility elevates the Inca rope bridges from a mere physical marvel into an intellectual enigma still waiting for its solution. Today, only one living Inca bridge remains Queswachaca. Each year, 4 villages around the Huinchiri Canyon rebuild it, using the exact methods their ancestors used centuries ago. Strangely, despite lacking plans or measurements, the bridge turns out almost identical every single year, identical in length, identical in curvature, identical in the strength of its handrails. So precise that several engineers admit its consistent uniformity exceeds what an ordinary rural workforce should achieve. And that is when the greatest question arises, a question archaeology still cannot answer. There is no evidence of technical evolution, no early prototypes, no written documents, no experimental phases preserved in archaeological layers. The rope bridge technique appears suddenly fully refined, highly sophisticated, and far more capable than expected for a civilization without wheels or metal. The true origin of Inca rope bridge engineering remains one of the greatest unanswered questions in Andean archaeology, and the four main theories proposed so far all contain puzzling gaps. The first theory suggests that this was an indigenous technique gradually developed over many generations. However, this idea faces a major obstacle. There is no archaeological evidence showing any form of evolution in rope bridge construction. If such an advanced technique once had primitive beginnings, there should be traces, prototypes, older versions, or transitional designs, but none have ever been discovered. The second theory proposes that the technique may be a legacy from a lost pre-Andean civilization. Cultures such as Huaychavanmochica and Tiwanaku existed long before the Inca, yet none are known to have built large-scale rope bridges, making this theory intriguing but difficult to verify. Some scholars also believe that the construction methods may have been encoded within the knotted string system of quipu, turning it into a kind of technical language that the modern world has not yet deciphered. If true Inca bridge-weaving knowledge may still be hidden within a layer of encoded information we cannot read. Finally, there are those who argue that the technique originated from a group of technical sages, individuals with exceptional engineering understanding who passed down their knowledge orally rather than through written records. Each theory carries its own appeal, yet all remain inconclusive, leaving the origin of Inca rope bridge technology an enduring mystery with no definitive answer. No matter which theory you support, one fact remains unshaken. No one knows where the Inca rope bridge technique truly originated. It stands as a paradoxical technological achievement for a civilization using only primitive tools. And every year, when Queswachaka is woven anew, the world must ask, is this the final surviving legacy of a vanished civilization? Or does it simply reflect the extraordinary creativity of ancient people beyond what we often imagine? To this day, the origin of the Inca rope bridges hangs in mystery, just like the bridges themselves suspended over the abyss of the Andes, beautiful, flawless, and forever challenging modern understanding. In the heart of Egypt's desert, far from the splendor of pyramids and the golden echoes of the pharaohs, archaeologists stumbled upon something they were never prepared for: a human skeleton so old, so anatomically strange, and so completely out of place that it shattered everything we thought we knew about the origins of humanity in the Nile Valley. This was not a mummy, not a royal burial, not even part of any known culture. It was the body of a man who lived over 30,000 years before Egypt had a name, a time when no civilization should have existed here at all. Yet his grave was real, his tools were advanced, and his features were unlike any human group known to science. Many experts now whisper that NK2 is not just an archaeological discovery. He is a message from a chapter of human history we never realized was missing. Who do you think NK2 really was? An ancient laborer, or the last trace of a vanished civilization? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The age of NK2 is what astonishes archaeologists the most. In the harsh environment of Egypt, where scorching sand, dry winds, and constant erosion have erased nearly all traces of prehistoric humans, discovering a complete skeleton from more than 30,000 years ago is almost unimaginable. Yet NK2 exists, and what's even more remarkable is that analysis shows he is the earliest known evidence of Homo sapiens in Egypt. This discovery forces the scientific community to reconsider human migration maps, as it was previously believed that humans did not inhabit central Egypt during the last glacial period. NK2 has therefore become a crucial milestone, revealing a far more complex migratory journey than history has ever recorded. What perplexes scientists the most is not who NK2 belonged to, but rather his remarkably unusual anatomical features. NK2's skull is long and unusually narrow, an extremely rare morphology among modern humans, while his broad, low cheekbones resemble traits commonly seen in more ancient human groups. His lower jaw is thick, powerful, and developed far beyond the typical range of contemporary Homo sapiens. On the bones of his arms and legs, the prominent muscle attachment marks reveal a body that was exceptionally strong-shaped by years of intense physical labor. Although classified as biologically modern, NK2 still carries numerous archaic characteristics, almost like a transitional form between Homo sapiens and earlier Homo lineages. This strange combination of traits has led many anthropologists to wonder, was NK2 part of an isolated human lineage existing alongside, but completely separate from other modern human populations? And if so, why did this lineage vanish without leaving any trace? The stone tools found beside NK2 are one of the most astonishing aspects of the discovery, as they far exceed the level of simplicity traditionally associated with hunter-gatherer communities from more than 30,000 years ago. Lying right next to the skeleton was a pointed stone axe, expertly sharpened its surface, covered with countless wear marks, characteristic of prolonged use on extremely hard materials. These traces indicate that the tool was not used for ordinary tasks like cutting meat or chopping wood, but was likely involved in mining-related activities such as quarrying, breaking stone, or processing high-density rocks. This stands in stark contrast to the common belief that Paleolithic groups possessed only basic crafting skills for hunting purposes. The presence of such a refined tool raises the question, was NK2 actually part of a community with technical abilities far more advanced than expected for their time? What astonishes archaeologists is not only NK2 himself, but the way he was buried. NK2 was not left exposed to the elements like many other prehistoric individuals. He was carefully placed in a burial pit lying in an extended position, indicating a deliberate, intentional burial rather than an accidental death. This is exceptionally rare among Upper Paleolithic communities in North Africa, which often left bodies without any formal rituals. NK2's burial suggests that his group possessed a rudimentary form of social organization and perhaps even early notions of spirituality or respect for the dead. Yet the greatest paradox lies in the fact that apart from this grave, no trace of a community has ever been found, no dwellings, no clusters of tools, no settlements of any kind. The absolute solitude of NK2 raises a profound question for researchers: what culture performed such a careful burial, and how did it vanish completely from history? There is another possibility. NK2 may have belonged to a group skilled in resource extraction, possibly migrating seasonally and leaving no long-term settlements behind. The bone structure shows significant stress and muscle development, consistent with activities like stone cutting, quarrying, or mining. But if such a group existed, where are the others? Where is the rest of the community? And how could every trace of them vanish, leaving only one skeleton behind? Morphological analyses have pushed the mystery of NK2 to an even more perplexing level. When comparing skull structure, facial bones, body proportions, and jaw characteristics, NK2 does not match any known human group recorded in the region, not Nubians, not Levantine populations, not sub-Saharan Africans, and certainly not ancient Egyptians. This distinction goes beyond anatomy and extends to the entirely isolated archaeological context. NK2 appears alone, with no accompanying cultural traces or artifacts that might point to a specific community. This has led to the hypothesis that he may represent an unknown migratory branch, or perhaps belonged to a small population that went extinct very early, long before agricultural societies emerged in the Nile Valley. And here we arrive at the greatest mystery, the question that has fueled debate for decades. Was NK2 the remnant of a lost pre-agricultural civilization? The evidence surrounding NK2 makes the hypothesis of a vanished pre-agricultural civilization far less far-fetched than it might initially seem. First, the finely crafted stone tools found beside him reveal a level of technical skill far beyond what is expected for his era, bearing repeated wear marks characteristic of mining activities or the processing of extremely hard materials. Next, the fact that NK2 was deliberately buried indicates that his people did not live in the scattered, loosely organized manner typical of hunter-gatherer groups, but may have possessed a basic social structure and an early form of spiritual belief. His skeletal build, marked by exceptional muscular strength, reflects years of heavy labor, something that could only arise in an environment where skills were intentionally taught rather than emerging spontaneously in an individual. Furthermore, NK2's unique morphology, which matches none of the known human populations, positions him as a potential representative of an isolated lineage that existed parallel to, but separate from, other human groups. Yet the greatest mystery lies in the complete absence of settlement traces. No villages, no structures, no clusters of artifacts, only a solitary individual equipped with advanced tools. This striking contradiction suggests that NK2's community may have once existed, flourished, and then vanished before history had the chance to record their name, leaving behind a haunting gap that challenges everything we thought we understood about prehistoric life in the Nile Valley. If this hypothesis is correct, NK2 may be the last surviving trace of a pre-agricultural group with unexpectedly advanced technical skills. A group that lived, worked crafted tools, practiced ritual burial, yet ultimately disappeared without leaving anything behind except this single skeleton. NK2 is therefore a powerful reminder that human prehistory is not linear. It is filled with gaps, entire communities that once existed but left no written memory. Today, the Nazlet Carter skeleton remains an unsolved question. It lies in the Egyptian desert like a silent witness to a forgotten era, reminding us that some chapters of human history were never written, and NK2 may be one of the pages torn out of that ancient book. Among all the myths passed down from the ancient world, few places are as captivating, unsettling, and layered with symbolic meaning as the labyrinth of Crete. Existing on the thin boundary between legend and archaeology, this structure continues to puzzle scholars. Did it truly exist as a complex architectural construction? Or was it a symbolic creation shaped by myth over time? The Greeks said the labyrinth was built by Daedalus, the greatest architectural genius they had ever known, to imprison the Minotaur, a terrifying creature, half man and half bull. But once archaeology entered the conversation, the picture became far more complicated. Minoan construction techniques, bull-related religious rituals, the winding corridors of the palace at Knossos, and various other cultural elements all contribute to a story that feels half myth, half distorted historical memory. Do you think the Labyrinth of Crete was a real structure or just a symbolic myth? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'm really curious what you believe. The first striking aspect that made the Cretan labyrinth unforgettable is its impossibly complex depiction in Greek mythology. The Greeks said that no one who entered the labyrinth could ever escape, as if it were an infinite structure, designed not by human hands, but by supernatural intention. Walls twisting in circles, random turns, carefully placed dead ends, all of it paints a picture far beyond the architectural capabilities of the Bronze Age, at least by modern standards. Mythology loves exaggeration, of course, but one only needs to look at the Palace of Knossos, with its hundreds of rooms, overlapping floors, and maze-like corridors, to wonder perhaps the story wasn't entirely wrong. To the ancient Greeks, Knossos may very well have been the living embodiment of a labyrinth. The second element, adding mystery to the legend, is Daedalus, the architect said to have created the labyrinth. In Greek mythology, Daedalus was not just an engineer, but also an inventor-sculptor and craftsman, a figure so skilled he seemed almost superhuman. However, archaeologists have proposed that Daedalus may have been inspired by one or several real Minoan architects whose advanced engineering techniques impressed mainland Greeks. Sophisticated ventilation systems, multi-level staircases, and complex room arrangements could easily have overwhelmed visitors. Over generations, this cultural memory could have evolved into the legend of the genius Daedalus. The most haunting element of all is the Minotaur, the image of a half-man, half-bull creature roaring inside the dark labyrinth has terrified listeners for centuries. Yet most modern scholars believe the Minotaur may have been a cultural symbol representing the bull worship rituals of the Minoans. Frescoes depicting the bull-leaping ritual show deep reverence for bulls, one of the most sacred symbols on Crete. Hybrid human-animal imagery is also common across ancient civilizations, often representing power punishment or uncontrollable natural forces. Thus, the Minotaur may have been a Greek reinterpretation of Minoan rituals they did not fully understand. The connection between the labyrinth and the palace of Knossos is one of the strongest pieces of evidence that the myth had real roots. Unlike many contemporary structures in Europe, Knossos lacks a centralized layout. It spreads outward in an irregular fashion, with winding hallways, hidden chambers, underground passages, and unpredictable turns enough to disorient any newcomer. Storage rooms, ritual spaces, and ceremonial areas are laid out in ways that defy straightforward navigation. This has led many scholars to believe that the ancient Greeks modeled the labyrinth myth after Knossos itself. Minoan rituals add yet another layer to the legend. The double-axe symbol, the labyrinth, appears throughout Knossos, carved into walls, painted on pottery, and associated with religious power. Some linguists argue that the word labyrinth may derive from labris, meaning the place of the double axe. If true, the labyrinth may have originally referred to a sacred ceremonial complex within the palace reserved for the Minoan elite. Bulls, the labyrinth's sacrificial rites, and winding corridors all connect too neatly to dismiss it as coincidence. What's even more fascinating is that labyrinth symbols are not unique to Greece. Spiral patterns, maze-like pathways, and complex ritual corridors appear in ancient cultures from Scandinavia to India, from Egypt to the Americas. Why did civilizations with no contact invent such similar symbols? Some scholars believe the labyrinth is a universal archetype linked to spiritual journey initiation rituals or fear of crossing into an unknown realm. If so, the Cretan labyrinth may not be a fictional invention, but a uniquely Minoan interpretation of a near-universal symbol. All of these characteristics, however, only serve as a prelude to the greatest mystery, the question that has fueled debate for over 2,000 years. The greatest mystery surrounding the labyrinth of Crete doesn't lie in the Minotaur or the terrifying rituals associated with it, but in the essential question, did this labyrinth truly exist, or was it merely a symbolic construct shaped by centuries of myth? To this day, scholars have never reached a consensus. Some believe the labyrinth was a real architectural structure, possibly located deep beneath the palace of Knossos, and later destroyed entirely by earthquakes, a plausible scenario since Crete lies in a highly seismic region where many ancient structures have vanished in similar ways. Another perspective argues that the labyrinth was simply an exaggerated description of Knossos itself, a palace with hundreds of rooms, tangled corridors, and overlapping levels that would easily overwhelm any visitor from mainland Greece, who might then recount it as an inescapable maze. There is also the view that the labyrinth was never meant to be a physical location, but rather a religious or political metaphor, with the Minotaur symbolizing punishment, tyranny, or ritual sacrifices incomprehensible to outsiders, while the labyrinth represented a state of spiritual entrapment. And finally, a more balanced hypothesis suggests that the labyrinth was both real and symbolic, a structure that existed but whose story was embellished over generations, much like many other Greek myths rooted in fragmented historical memories. This ambiguity between reality and metaphor is precisely what makes the Labyrinth of Crete a mystery no one can definitively resolve. The most fascinating question is not, did the Minotaur exist, but why was the Minoan civilization so deeply connected to the labyrinth symbol? Perhaps the labyrinth reflects the very nature of Minoan society, complex, ritualistic, multi-layered, and filled with hidden systems of power. From the outside, Greeks may have seen this complexity and transformed it into a story of an inescapable maze. Even today, despite extensive excavations, no labyrinth matching the myth has ever been found. But neither has anyone proven it didn't exist. This unresolved gap, neither confirmed nor disproven, is exactly what keeps the Cretan labyrinth one of the most enduring mysteries of the ancient world. And perhaps that is why humanity remains captivated by the labyrinth, because sometimes not knowing the truth is precisely what keeps a mystery alive. The kingdom of Khotan was once one of the most brilliant centers along the Silk Road. Situated in the middle of the Taklamakan Desert, a land ancient people called the Desert of Death, where wandering off for just a few hours could make an entire caravan vanish without a trace. And yet for thousands of years, amid this vast ocean of sand, a prosperous, wealthy, and mysterious civilization thrived, one so influential that the empires of China, India, and Persia all fought for its alliance. Khotan was renowned for the purest nephrite jade in the world, its grand Buddhist monasteries, gilded statues, and the Saka writing system shaped by diverse cultures. But then, as if erased by an invisible hand, Khotan disappeared in just a few generations. To this day, the scorching sands of the Taklamakan continue to hide the final chapter of this vanished kingdom. What do you think truly caused the kingdom of Khotan to disappear? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The origins of Khotan's inhabitants remain one of Central Asia's most puzzling archaeological mysteries. The mummies found across the Tarim Basin bear ancient European traits: blonde hair, high, nasal bridges, elongated skulls, completely different from the surrounding East Asian populations. Furthermore, their Saka language belonged to the Indo-Iranian branch, hinting at distant connections to Western nomadic groups. The enigma lies in this question: why would a population with West Asian or even prehistoric European ancestry choose to settle in the heart of the Taklamakan, one of the harshest deserts on Earth? The mystery deepens with Buddhist legends claiming that Khotan was founded by an Indian prince and a band of elusive wanderers, blurring their history between reality and myth. What made Khotan a shining jewel of the Silk Road was its critical strategic position at the intersection of East-West trade routes. Chinese merchants brought silk and ceramics, while traders from Persia and India carried spices, gold gemstones, and new technologies. Khotan wasn't just a stopover, it was a rare point of cultural fusion. Surviving manuscripts show a unique blend of writing and languages. Brahmi script from India, Iranian vocabulary, Central Asian grammar, and Gandharan artistic influence, all coexisting within a small desert kingdom. Khotan truly functioned as an ancient cultural laboratory. Khotan is most renowned for its treasury of nephrite jade, a resource so valuable that it shaped the kingdom's prestige and political power. The Urunkash River carried smooth, milky white stones, considered the purest jade in all of Asia, used in sacred rituals, imperial seals, and symbols of supreme authority. Emperors of the Han and Tang dynasties regarded Khotan as the jade vein of the Celestial Empire, believing its precious stones carried heavenly significance. What puzzles scientists is how such an enormous deposit could exist in a region almost completely arid. Some geologists suggest that the Kunlun Mountains once held ancient mineral seams fractured millions of years ago, sending jade down into the basin. Yet no definitive evidence supports this theory, leaving Khotan's jade treasury one of Central Asia's most intriguing natural mysteries. Beyond wealth, Khotan was a powerful Buddhist center, with dozens of large monasteries, ancient scriptures, and statues described as among the tallest in Central Asia. Yet mysteriously, most of these structures have disappeared, not merely destroyed, but almost erased. What happened to these monasteries? Why did an entire Buddhist library, once praised in ancient texts, simply vanish? The collapse of Khotan happened so abruptly that archaeologists still regard it as one of the most baffling events in Central Asian history. Within just 1 or 2 generations, entire cities were buried beneath 5 to 20 meters of sand, leaving wooden structures intact, and manuscripts on leaf and paper still readable, clear signs that the inhabitants fled in chaos or never had the chance to escape. Ancient Chinese records describe sand avalanches, massive dunes collapsing and swallowing whole villages in a single night. Yet even such violent natural disasters cannot fully explain how an entire kingdom vanished without leaving behind any substantial trace of migration or systematic destruction. Records of the Kara Khanid Khanate invasion in the 11th century describe violent destruction, especially targeting Buddhism. Monasteries were burned, scriptures destroyed, statues smashed. But no conquering army has ever completely erased a civilization from geography and culture within decades. How did the entire population vanish? Why did the Saka language die out completely? Why was the identity of Khotan wiped clean? The greatest mystery surrounding the history of Khotan is the question of how a once wealthy and culturally influential kingdom could vanish so abruptly that it nearly erased all traces of its existence. For decades, archaeologists and geologists have proposed 3 major theories, yet the unsettling truth is that none of them can fully explain the scale of this disappearance. The first theory suggests that Khotan was struck by a catastrophic wave of rapid desertification when the Urankash River suddenly changed its course, depriving the region of water and rendering entire cities uninhabitable within just a few years. Sandstorms and the unusual expansion of the Taklamakan Desert may have quickly buried settlements. However, to match the evidence, the desertification would have needed to occur at an extraordinarily accelerated pace, faster than any recorded phenomenon, and strangely neighboring regions did not suffer the same fate. The second theory centers on the Kara Khanid invasion and a brutal campaign of Buddhist suppression. Although records of burned monasteries, shattered statues, and forced conversions are authentic, such destruction alone cannot erase an entire civilization. No other conquered kingdom in the region disappeared from the historical record as rapidly and completely as Khotan. Manuscripts, inscriptions, and cultural artifacts vanished in ways that appear almost deliberate, as though someone intended to remove Khotan from collective memory. The third theory proposes a combined scenario. Khotan may have faced a sequence of environmental disasters, the river's diversion, relentless sandstorms, and widespread agricultural collapse, driving the population into starvation and forcing them to abandon their homeland. Yet the key question remains: if there truly was a mass migration, why did its people leave behind no trails, cultural footprints, or burial grounds unlike other ancient communities? What remains of Khotan today are fragments, scattered manuscripts, a few preserved mummies, and cities entombed in sand at the foot of the Kunlun Mountains. No clear record of migration, no signs of mass death, no trace of a widespread plague. It is the silence, the total absence of evidence, that makes Khotan one of the greatest mysteries of the Silk Road. A once wealthy, influential, and culturally vibrant civilization vanished as though it had never existed. And even now, the question, why did Khotan disappear, remains a secret guarded by the Taklamakan Desert. Amid the violent seas off the coast of Nagasaki, where the wind and waves never rest, lies a tiny island so small you could walk across it in minutes, yet it carries a massive seawall that has puzzled the world for decades. This is Hashima, or Gunkanjima, the battleship island. Seen from afar, Hashima resembles an abandoned warship floating in the Pacific, surrounded by towering concrete walls that have stood firm through more than a century of storms. And these seawalls, seemingly simple structures, have become the island's greatest mystery. What do you think Hashima's seawall was truly built to withstand? Share your theory in the comments below. Hashima once functioned as an offshore coal mine operating from 1887 to 1974. But what makes it unique is not the mine, the factories, or the densely packed apartment blocks. It is the seawall surrounding the island. Standing between 10 and 20 meters tall, unusually thick and reinforced to the level of anti-bomb structures rather than simple wave barriers, the Hashima seawall is unlike any other in Japan or even the world. Its scale, strength, and overkill construction remain unmatched. During its peak, Hashima was one of the most densely populated places on Earth. 7 to 9-story concrete housing blocks stood cramped on only 6.3 hectares of land. Yet the seawall was the true boundary, the final barrier separating human life from the raging sea outside. Built in multiple layers and expanded over several periods, the wall grew taller and thicker with time. This suggests that residents faced something extremely dangerous or feared something even greater than the sea itself. Modern research shows that storms around Japan can be severe, but they still do not explain why Hashima needed such a giant wall. If storms were the only reason, then other mining islands and coastal facilities should have similar structures. But they do not. Only Hashima possesses a seawall built to near military specifications. Many marine architecture specialists call it a wave fortress, a design far beyond what the island's industrial purpose would suggest. Unusually, the seawall of Hashima has no large gates opening toward the sea, unlike typical breakwater islands. Most of it is solid without passages, giving the island the appearance of a floating prison rather than a residential community. This raises unsettling questions. If Hashima was merely an industrial island, why did residents have to live inside a sealed concrete box? Why was access to the sea, something natural for island life, restricted so drastically? One of the most puzzling aspects for researchers is the presence of seemingly military features built directly into Hashima's seawall. Hidden between thick layers of concrete, investigators found narrow corridors leading to small recesses that resemble observation slits, along with structures whose shapes align almost perfectly with gun ports used in World War-era fortifications. What makes this even stranger is that no official documents ever mention Hashima being used for any military purpose. This silence only strengthens the theory that the island may once have played a secret defensive role, one that was never meant to be revealed. The durability of the Hashima seawall borders on unbelievable. Abandoned since 1974, battered by decades of storms, strong winds, and relentless waves, most of it still stands. While many modern concrete structures collapse after just a few decades, Hashima remains intact. Given the limited materials and rudimentary technology of the time, such resilience shouldn't have been possible. This leads to the second major theory: the construction techniques were ahead of their time, or built to standards far beyond normal industrial requirements. Another mystery lies in the placement of the seawall. The thickest segments align precisely with the areas where waves strike hardest, something that seems normal, until researchers point out that this precision exceeds the capabilities of late 19th or early 20th century maritime engineering. To achieve such accuracy, one would need advanced knowledge of wave patterns or simulation techniques, things that did not exist then. Did they observe for decades? Or was there a method lost to history? All these details, strange findings, and unexplained choices converge into a single question, one that researchers still debate to this day. Even after more than a century of existence and half a century of abandonment, Hashima's seawall remains one of the most perplexing structures ever examined by Japanese researchers. No technical documents, no detailed blueprints, and no construction reports explain why a tiny island used solely for coal extraction required a seawall as fortified as a military stronghold. Many theories have been proposed, yet each carries major gaps. The storm defense theory, seemingly the most reasonable, fails to convince numerous offshore Japanese islands endure far stronger typhoons, but only have lower, thinner sea walls. So why did Hashima build walls so tall they look as though they were preparing for the end of the world? The tsunami defense theory is also weak, as the Nagasaki region has no historical record of exceptionally massive tsunamis. This has led some scholars to wonder whether an unreported natural disaster struck during the island's early development, forcing engineers to construct walls far thicker than any standard of the era. Another line of inquiry focuses on architectural details resembling military observation structures, from narrow corridors to slit-like recesses. If Hashima once played a secret strategic role in Japan's defense system, then its unusually thick walls would make sense, but why have all records disappeared? Adding to the mystery is the quality and longevity of the concrete itself. Many modern engineers believe Hashima was built using techniques far superior to the general technological level of Japan at that time. If construction standards were truly elevated, then for what purpose? What were they protecting? Or what were they trying to keep out? All these questions combined make Hashima's seawall an enduring enigma, one that even today, no explanation has been strong enough to close. Today, Hashima is a tourist attraction, a cultural icon and the backdrop of many films, yet its sea walls remain the most silent part of the island. Standing atop the towering concrete, watching the ocean crash endlessly below, one feels something that no document can describe. This place was not built merely to resist waves, it was built to resist something we still do not understand. Maybe it was nature, maybe war, maybe a disaster erased from history, or perhaps a primal fear that the island's early inhabitants once experienced. Until new evidence emerges, the reason behind Hashima's excessively fortified seawall will remain one of Japan's most intriguing unsolved mysteries. The Ain Ghazal plaster statue's purpose stands as one of the strangest anthropological mysteries ever discovered in the Middle East. When archaeologists excavated the Ain Ghazal settlement in Jordan in the early 1980s, they never expected that beneath a thin layer of soil lay one of the oldest collections of human statues on Earth, a group of 30 large and small figures created 6,000 years before the Common Era, long before the Egyptian pyramids by millennia. What amazed specialists was not only their age, but also their form craftsmanship and the unresolved purpose behind them. These statues do not resemble any known artistic tradition of the Neolithic era, faces with unusually round eyes, almost no mouths, elongated and stretched-looking bodies, and a stylistic expression that gives every viewer a sense of something different, ancient and unsettling, something that does not fit into any known cultural framework. Why do you think these ancient statues were made with such strange faces? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The craftsmanship behind the Ain Ghazal statues astonishes archaeologists because of its complexity, far beyond what is typically associated with the Neolithic period. The ancient makers did not simply mold figures from clay or stone, they constructed internal frames from tightly bound reeds, then coated them with multiple layers of plaster, produced by heating limestone at extremely high temperatures, a process requiring precise fire control and a fuel supply that few communities of that era could achieve. Creating dozens of statues, nearly the size of real humans, suggests an organized labor system likely involving material collectors, lime burners, sculptors, and participants in ritual practices. Yet the greatest puzzle lies in what happened afterward. Despite their sophistication, the statues were never displayed or worshipped. They were not placed in homes, temples, or any sacred setting. Instead, they were buried in the ground in distinct batches as part of a mysterious ritual. Many were even deliberately broken beforehand, as if destruction were an essential stage of the ceremony. Why would the people of Ain Ghazal invest immense effort into creating such elaborate objects only to make them vanish immediately? The true purpose remains a question without an answer. The fact that the statues were made in batches is another unusual feature. Who needs a cluster of nearly identical statues, all with emotionless expressions, deep black bitumen eyes, flat faces, and without any personal identifying traits? These are not portraits, idols, or representations of any known historical or mythological figure. They resemble a mysterious population of people, recreated in plaster, not individuals, but a group. Could the people of Ain Ghazal have been trying to depict another community? A vanished group, some kind of spiritual beings within their belief system, or perhaps even a type of human that was not their own. The hypothesis that the Ain Ghazal statues represent ancestors was once widely supported, since in many Neolithic cultures, statue making was closely connected to rituals honoring the dead. However, a closer examination of the details quickly exposes major inconsistencies. The statues show no signs of individualization, no wrinkles, no gender markers, no indications of age, and no personal characteristics of any kind. They all look eerily identical, as if produced from a single mold. This directly contradicts the nature of ancestral representations, which typically emphasize the individuality of each person. Such complete anonymity has led many researchers to suspect that the people of Ain Ghazal were not attempting to depict real humans at all, but rather some kind of sacred or spiritual beings. Some theories suggest these figures may represent intermediary entities, supernatural characters believed to stand between humans and higher powers. Yet no accompanying symbols, carvings, or written records exist to confirm this interpretation, leaving the true purpose behind these featureless faces as a lingering void in human history. One of the most haunting aspects of the Ain Ghazal statues is the fact that they were deliberately broken before being buried. Many figures show signs of necks forcibly bent, fractures running across their faces or bodies, separated into several pieces, all clearly caused by intentional human action rather than natural decay. This raises an unsettling question: were the ancient people ending the symbolic life of the statues or attempting to release something they believed resided within them? Some scholars argue that this act of ritual destruction may have been the final stage in the statues' ceremonial life cycle, creating them, activating their power, and then destroying them to close a sacred communal rite. Yet no evidence explains the true purpose behind this practice, leaving the ritual shrouded in darkness, a secret the people of Ain Ghazal seemingly never intended to reveal. The geographic context deepens the mystery. Ain Ghazal was once one of the largest Neolithic settlements, possibly home to 3,000 people, an enormous population for that era. A society of such scale must have had belief system traditions and collective rituals. Yet aside from these statues, almost no evidence points to an elaborate religious structure. There are no temples, no clear symbols of gods, no texts, no carvings, only the flat faces, the wide open eyes, and a silence that has lasted 6,000 years. And this is where the greatest mystery emerges, the question science still cannot answer today. Who do these faces represent? This is what makes Ain Ghazal one of the greatest anthropological enigmas of all time. If the statues are not gods, not ancestors, and not portraits, then what are they? Some archaeologists propose that the statues depict another community that once lived nearby, perhaps a group that vanished through conflict, disease, or natural disaster. They may have played an important role in the collective memory of Ain Ghazal's people, represented here as anonymous shadows. A more daring theory posits that they depict teachers, legendary figures, believed to have given their community knowledge of agriculture, fire, or material technology. If so, the lack of mouths, gender, or age may be intentional. They were not meant to resemble humans, but a sacred form beyond human categories. Some modern scholars even suggest that the flat faces, large eyes, and elongated bodies could represent a form of trance state imagery or a spiritual transformation that the community regarded as holy. Others wonder whether the statues capture a cultural memory of an earlier people, an archaic group with distinct features that had mixed with them or disappeared before written history began. Whether they represent ancestors, supernatural beings, a vanished tribe, or an abstract sacred archetype, everything remains speculative. There is no final answer, no texts, no direct evidence to confirm any theory. And so the Ongazal plaster statues stand as a haunting reminder humanity has stories that was never fully told, faces created not to explain, but to conceal something. 6,000 years have passed, yet those deep black eyes still stare back at us, cold, silent, and full of questions, as if waiting for humanity to uncover the secret they guard. In the dense rainforest of Central America, where humidity levels are high enough to rot any organic material, within just a few years there exists a paradox that has puzzled archaeologists for decades. The Maya wooden lintels, the beams placed above temple entrances and doorways have survived for thousands of years. They have not only endured, but remain astonishingly well preserved. Carvings are still sharp, surfaces intact, and calendrical or astronomical inscriptions remain readable despite more than 10 centuries of rain, heat, and biological decay. In an environment where ordinary wood would be consumed by mold and termites within 5 to 10 years, the fact that Maya lintels have survived for 13 to 14 centuries defies every natural law. And this very impossible survival makes them one of the most remarkable mysteries of the ancient Maya civilization. What do you think truly helped the Maya wooden lintels survive for over 1,000 years? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Although the Maya used famously hard and durable woods such as chico zapote, sapodilla, mahogany, and chicle, their natural strength still cannot explain how they survived for more than a millennium under the destructive conditions of the Central American rainforest. These woods contain abundant natural resin, which helps resist moisture and slows microbial activity. Yet modern experiments show that even sapodilla, one of the strongest hardwoods, will rot within just a few years when exposed to environments with nearly 95% humidity, constant heat, and dense populations of bacteria, fungi, and termites. In such conditions, wood doesn't simply degrade on the surface. Its growth rings, deform carved details erode, and the structure quickly collapses. And yet Maya lintels remain so intact that tool marks, carved lines, and calendrical inscriptions are still sharply visible. Archaeologists can even use them to analyze ancient climate fluctuations or determine construction dates of temples. This impossible level of preservation suggests that these wooden beams possess a resistance to decay far beyond what any natural explanation can fully account for. Some researchers believe that the placement of the lintels played an important role in their extraordinary longevity. In many Maya temples, these wooden beams were positioned high above doorways, recessed deeply beneath overhanging roofs that shielded them from direct rainfall. The thick walls and deep entrances also created natural airflow, keeping the wood dry and reducing moisture accumulation, a factor that typically causes rapid decay. On the surface, this hypothesis seems reasonable. Maya architecture clearly reflects a sophisticated understanding of how to protect organic materials. However, when compared with other structures in the rainforest, even those with similar protective designs, most wooden elements still deteriorate within a short time. This suggests that the placement of the lintels only explains a very small part of the mystery and is far from sufficient to account for their survival over more than a millennium. The most compelling hypothesis suggests that the Maya once possessed a sophisticated wood preservation technique that has now been completely lost, a method capable of protecting wood from mold insects, moisture, and decay for centuries. When analyzing surviving lintel samples, scientists discovered traces indicating that the beams had been lightly smoked over long periods or exposed to low steady heat, a technique used by many ancient cultures to increase wood durability. Smoke particles bond to the wood fibers, forming a hydrophobic barrier that suppresses bacterial and fungal growth. However, Maya lintels do not fully match the characteristics of ordinary smoked wood. They are harder, denser, and more dimensionally stable than any modern smoked wood samples. Some even contain traces of tree resin that have crystallized into a natural protective coating, almost like a primitive form of varnish. What confuses researchers is that no single preservation process can account for all these traits. In fact, not all lintels share the same features, suggesting that the Maya may have used multiple treatment steps or perhaps possess techniques that modern science has yet to recognize or recreate. Another hypothesis suggests that the wooden lintels may have been sourced from forest regions unusually rich in minerals, where the soil contains an abnormally high amount of natural silica. When analyzed, several lintel samples showed silica levels so elevated that the wood fibers appeared to undergo partial petrification over time, a rare form of natural mineralization. Silica can penetrate the cellulose structure, making the wood harder, heavier, and far more resistant to decay. However, the controversy lies here: how could living trees absorb such high concentrations of minerals without dying? And why do only the trees selected for lintels exhibit this property, while nearby trees do not? This remains a question that modern science has yet to answer fully. Even more interestingly, many lintels contain important Maya inscriptions, royal accession dates, military victories, astronomical observations, and ritual records. This means wooden lintels were not merely structural elements, but sacred carriers of ceremonial and historical information. One theory suggests that because of their sacred status, the Maya may have maintained these wooden beams for generations, coating them with oils, applying tree resins, smoking them periodically, or cleaning them in ritual cycles. This could explain the thin layers of soot or organic residue on certain lintels, but such maintenance would have had to continue for centuries until the collapse of the Maya polities. Is that plausible? Hard to confirm, but not impossible. Despite many theories, the greatest mystery remains. What truly allowed the Maya wooden lintels to survive for so long? No explanation is sufficient. If it was simply the wood type, why don't other cultures using the same species achieve similar longevity? If it was placement, why did other wooden elements in the same buildings decay? If it was a preservation technique, why is there no clear evidence of the method? If it was natural mineralization, how could that occur in a rainforest, an environment that destroys organic material rather than preserving it? Modern scientists have even attempted to recreate the lintels using sapodilla wood and exposing it to high humidity environments. The result is always the same. The wood decays within a few years, meaning the lintels cannot survive naturally unless there is a missing factor we have not yet identified, or a technique the Maya used has completely vanished from history. So what truly lies behind their astonishing longevity? A lost wood preservation technology, a rare resin known only to Maya craftsmen, a forest with unique mineral chemistry, or a combination of all these factors enhanced by a sophisticated smoking technique we have yet to fully detect. The impossible survival of these wooden lintels reminds us not only of the architectural skill of the Maya, but also of the sophistication we still do not fully understand. It is proof that sometimes the greatest mysteries do not lie in massive pyramids or grand stone monuments, but in a simple piece of wood, a piece that should have disappeared long ago, yet continues to defy time itself. For decades, The Bermuda Triangle has topped the list of the planet's most inexplicable mysteries. Located between Miami, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico, this vast triangular region has become the center of countless strange disappearances, unbelievable maritime reports, and scientific hypotheses that are repeatedly proposed only to be dismissed again. If there is any place on Earth where the line between science and the supernatural becomes blurred, it is the Bermuda Triangle, where weather, ocean currents, magnetic anomalies, and perhaps even unknown forces converge. So what do you think is truly happening inside the Bermuda Triangle? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Since the early 20th century, the first disappearances had already transformed the Bermuda Triangle into one of the most fearsome regions on the maritime map. Many ships sailing under clear blue skies and perfectly calm waters suddenly vanished from radar without leaving any distress signals behind. There were no oil traces, no floating debris, and absolutely no signs indicating that an accident had occurred. Among these cases, the most bewildering is the disappearance of Flight 19. In 1945, 5 TBM Avenger bombers simultaneously reported their compasses spinning wildly daylight, suddenly turning dark, and a strange sensation as if they were being pulled into another kind of space. The rescue seaplane sent immediately afterward also vanished, bringing the total to 27 people who never returned. Strangely, every investigative effort that followed failed to uncover any clear clues, making these early disappearances the foundation of the Bermuda Triangle's chilling reputation, a place where vanishings occur swiftly, cleanly, and inexplicably far beyond the limits of conventional understanding. Magnetic anomalies in the Bermuda Triangle have long been one of the most perplexing mysteries for scientists. This region is one of the rare places on Earth where magnetic north and true north occasionally align, creating sudden deviations that cause pilots and sailors to lose their sense of direction in a few dangerously critical seconds. Many witnesses have reported compass needles spinning uncontrollably, jumping erratically, or pointing toward completely illogical directions, temporarily disabling the entire navigation system. What makes it even more unsettling is that these incidents often occur under perfectly normal weather conditions with no signs of geomagnetic storms or signal interference. Experts suggest that the electromagnetic field in this area may fluctuate in ways that current science still cannot fully model or understand. In the vast openness of the ocean, just a few minutes of faulty instruments are enough to cause flight path deviations or deadly collisions, and this is precisely why magnetic anomalies remain one of the most enigmatic pieces of the Bermuda Triangle puzzle. The rogue wave phenomenon in the Bermuda Triangle is one of the most compelling yet unsettling scientific explanations. These massive waves, reaching heights of 20 to 30 meters, can appear suddenly within just a few seconds, completely defying the normal patterns of ocean waves. In the past, they were dismissed as maritime legends because no one survived to describe them until modern technology finally confirmed their existence. With a height equivalent to an 8-story building, a single wave of this magnitude can swallow a 1,000-ton cargo ship before the crew even has time to send out a distress signal. The complex seafloor topography, strong winds, and powerful currents make the Bermuda Triangle an ideal environment for these dangerous waves to form. This could explain why many ships disappear rapidly without leaving behind any trace. The methane hydrate hypothesis is one of the most intriguing scientific explanations associated with the Bermuda Triangle. Beneath the seafloor of this region lie massive layers of solidified methane, compressed under extreme pressure. When temperature or geological conditions shift suddenly, these methane deposits can release enormous amounts of gas, forming thick columns of bubbles rising rapidly to the surface. This drastically reduces the density of the surrounding water, causing any ship above to lose all buoyancy and plunge straight down into the ocean within seconds. Such an event would be powerful enough to make a 1,000-ton vessel disappear without leaving any trace on the surface. However, to this day, no direct evidence has confirmed that methane eruptions of this scale have occurred in any of the triangle's famous incidents. If such traces do exist, they are likely hidden deep within ocean layers that humans have yet to fully explore. Weather in the Bermuda Triangle is notoriously unpredictable. Small storms can form within minutes, generating sudden whirlwinds capable of dropping low-flying aircraft or overturning small boats instantly. Some modern satellite images show unusual hexagonal cloud patterns, rare atmospheric formations, capable of producing powerful downward blasts of wind similar to massive air bombs. Yet the strangest part is that many disappearances occurred under ideal weather conditions, with clear skies and no signs of danger. Pilots crossing this region have repeatedly reported radio loss, electronic interference, or even a wall of strange fog surrounding their aircraft. Some describe it as an eerie electronic mist that darkens the surroundings and disrupts navigation equipment. After escaping the fog, every time measuring device on the aircraft shows minutes or even tens of minutes of discrepancy. These accounts, although difficult to verify, have been described by multiple independent witnesses in remarkably similar ways, adding to the scientific community's confusion. However, the greatest mystery, and the reason the Bermuda Triangle is known worldwide, boils down to one question. Why does all evidence vanish? If a ship sinks, there should logically be oil traces floating, debris, distress signals, or at least a recorded impact location. But the Bermuda Triangle often leaves nothing behind. The powerful Gulf Stream is considered part of the explanation. It can sweep debris away hundreds of kilometers within hours. But this still doesn't explain why many cases show zero debris even when search teams were deployed immediately after the incident. Some scientists believe the triangle's seabed is riddled with deep underwater pits, trenches thousands of meters deep like oceanic black holes. Anything that sinks would be pulled into perpetual darkness, where extreme pressure makes retrieval nearly impossible. Yet even this fails to answer everything. Professional investigators argue that even if wreckage cannot be found, radio signals, radar data, or communication disruptions should still be recorded. Instead, many Bermuda Triangle incidents appear as if they were erased from all tracking systems. It is this disappearance of evidence, no debris, no signals, no data, that elevates the Bermuda Triangle into one of Earth's greatest mysteries. The phenomenon has inspired countless theories: magnetic field interference, unknown atmospheric conditions, and even speculative ideas about portals or extraterrestrial influence. While scientists consistently pursue rational explanations, every new disappearance only adds more unanswered questions. Ultimately, despite decades of research, the Bermuda Triangle remains a reminder of how little we truly understand about our oceans. Until humanity can map the entire sea floor, analyze every atmospheric pattern, and decode complex magnetic interactions, the Bermuda Triangle will remain an immortal symbol of mysteries without traces, a place where, in the most inexplicable way, every piece of evidence disappears before it can ever be found. The Varna necropolis, discovered on the shores of the Black Sea in Bulgaria, is not merely an ancient cemetery. It is one of the most perplexing archaeological discoveries of the entire ancient world. Dating to around 4,500 to 4,300 BCE, this site belongs to a time when Europe was still transitioning from stone tools to early metallurgy. Yet beneath the soil of Varna lies more gold than all other contemporary sites combined. More than 3,000 gold artifacts were unearthed: beads, diadem scepters, chest plates, and intricate jewelry. This astonishing amount of gold appears centuries earlier than the pharaohs of Egypt or the royal treasures of Mesopotamia. The people of Varna, with no writing system, no monumental temples, and no recorded kings, somehow produced the world's earliest known gold. But the most haunting question is not how they made the gold, it's why it was distributed so unevenly, contradicting everything we would expect from a Neolithic society. What do you think happened here? How could a prehistoric society create so much gold, yet give it to only a few individuals? Share your thoughts in the comments below. At the center of the entire Varna mystery lies tomb number 43, a single burial powerful enough to reshape the archaeological understanding of prehistoric Europe. Inside, the remains of a man around 40 to 45 years old were laid in an unusually dignified manner, even though he showed no signs of being a warrior priest or leader by any traditional definition. Yet surrounding him was an amount of gold far beyond imagination. Golden plates covering his chest bracelets tightly wrapped around his arms, and hundreds of finely crafted ornaments arranged with deliberate intention. His left hand rested on his abdomen, holding an object resembling a ceremonial scepter, hinting at a special ritual role or symbolic authority. Meanwhile, countless other graves in the same necropolis were completely empty, with no gold and, in many cases, no body at all, mere symbolic cenotaphs filled with treasure offered to invisible individuals. This extreme contrast forces a startling question. How could such a seemingly primitive society possess such an immense divide in power and symbolic status? This strange pattern forced archaeologists to reconsider everything previously believed about early European social structure. The intense concentration of wealth suggests not just a stratified society, but a highly centralized and rigid hierarchy where an elite class controlled resources, influenced trade routes, and ritual authority. Evidence of long-distance trade, especially spondylus shells from the Aegean Sea, shows that Varna was part of a vast economic network. The elites may have managed this network, accumulating prestige and wealth from far beyond their settlement. Yet even this does not fully explain the unusual symbolism expressed through the placement of gold on the bodies. The placement of gold in Tomb 43 follows a deliberate pattern concentrated around the head, chest, and arms, similar to regal or divine iconography in later civilizations. This indicates that gold was not merely wealth, it was a declaration of identity, legitimacy, and sacred authority. Many archaeologists believe the Varna elite served as spiritual leaders or proto-kings combining religious and economic power. But this raises a troubling question. If they had such an elite class, where are their palaces, their temples, or their written records? Why did Varna leave behind treasure, but no signs of a kingdom-like civilization? The presence of cenotaphs makes the puzzle even more complex. Why would people bury large quantities of gold without a body? Was the person lost at sea? Were these graves dedicated to mythical ancestors or symbolic beings? Or was the gold itself, the body, representing something beyond human form? This symbolic complexity reveals a worldview far more sophisticated than simple wealth accumulation. But all of these observations ultimately lead us to the greatest mystery of all, the central question that has tormented scholars for decades. Why was the gold distributed so unevenly? What was the true purpose behind this dramatic imbalance? This is the moment where history begins to slip out of the realm of understanding and enter the shadowy zone of mystery. Three major theories have been proposed, each convincing in its own way, yet none completely satisfactory. The first suggests that the unusual distribution of gold reflects a strict ritual hierarchy in which gold was considered sacred, linked to the sun deities or ancestral authority, and accessible only to a select few individuals. In this view, the man in Tomb 43 may not have been a political leader, but a keeper of the sacred metal, someone whose role required him to be covered in gold. Yet even this theory cannot fully explain why the divide in wealth was so extreme. The second theory proposes that Varna may have evolved into a proto-state society where economic power became highly concentrated in the hands of a small elite. This upper class could have controlled all metallurgical production, long-distance trade networks, and even agricultural output, creating a stratified social structure thousands of years earlier than previously believed. In such a system, gold was not merely wealth, but a tool of authority, a tangible marker of elevated status. If this theory is correct, Varna might represent the earliest ruling class in Europe. Yet the most puzzling question remains, if they were organized to such an advanced degree, why did this civilization vanish almost entirely, leaving behind nothing but its graves? The third and perhaps most fascinating interpretation suggests that the uneven distribution reflects a cultural ideology entirely different from our own. Gold may not have been wealth at all, but a symbolic language, a medium for storytelling, cosmic order, or ancestral identity. The richest graves might represent not individuals, but ritual offices or mythic roles. In this view, Tomb 43 is not the burial of a wealthy man. It is a ritual performance, a symbolic construction embodying the community's worldview. If this is true, the purpose of the uneven distribution was not economic, it was cosmological. Yet despite all theories, none fully align with the archaeological record. There are no written texts to clarify their beliefs, no monumental architecture to outline their political system, and no neighboring culture with comparable wealth. The Varna necropolis stands alone, an isolated, glittering anomaly in prehistory, a burst of complexity that appeared and vanished abruptly. This is what makes the Varna graves so haunting. The gold shining as brightly as it did 6,000 years ago does not reveal the full story, but it whispers of a society that understood power, identity, and ritual in ways we are only beginning to imagine. The uneven distribution of wealth is not just a statistical curiosity. It opens a window into a world where symbols mattered more than life, where a man could be buried like a king without ruling a kingdom, and where silent graves protect secrets modern society cannot yet decipher. In the end, the Varna necropolis forces us to face the possibility that early European societies were far more complex and far stranger than previously believed. And the question remains, echoing through every artifact ever uncovered. Why was the gold distributed this way? What purpose did this imbalance serve? Until new discoveries emerge, the truth remains glittering, silent, and deeply mysterious beneath the sands of Varna. The Taos hum is one of the most famous unexplained phenomena in the United States, a low-frequency sound that appears only in the small town of Taos, New Mexico, yet has puzzled the entire world. The first strange thing, and the starting point of every discussion, is that this sound is not universal. Not everyone can hear it. Only about 2 to 5% of local residents describe being able to hear the hum, a steady low vibration similar to the sound of a distant diesel engine running. For those who can hear it, the sound resonates in their ears like an invisible pulse, constant, intrusive, and especially noticeable at night when everything around is silent. But what is even more baffling is this. Although the sound is loud enough to cause sleeplessness, headaches, and pressure in the ears for those who hear it, most audio measurement devices fail to detect any clear signal. Do you think the Taos hum is a real sound? Or a phenomenon that science simply hasn't been able to measure yet? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Since the late 1980s, numerous professional research teams have traveled to Taos, carrying modern equipment such as low-frequency microphones, environmental sound analyzers, infrasonic sensors, and even geological vibration detectors. Yet all they captured were a few scattered signals, so faint they nearly dissolved into background noise, completely insufficient to identify any clear source. This silence from the instruments raises an unsettling question. Does the hum exist as a type of wave that current technology cannot yet detect, or is it not a conventional sound at all? What's even more surprising is that the phenomenon has persisted for decades without weakening. Residents describe it as the rumble of a generator deep underground, or a low drone like a jet engine trapped inside an invisible box, always present yet never seen. What makes the Taos hum even harder to explain is that many people insist they hear the vibration most clearly inside their homes rather than outdoors. This completely contradicts acoustic principles, since low-frequency sounds typically travel better in open spaces. This anomaly has forced researchers to propose that the hum might be a kind of standing wave or a low-frequency resonance trapped within the walls and ceilings of houses. However, all such theories remain speculative, with none supported by actual measurements. Experts have inspected electrical systems, pipelines, substations, industrial sites, military activity, and even electromagnetic sources, yet none produce a signal with the long-term stability described by residents. Nowhere known to science can generate a sound so persistent and enduring for decades. Some scientists believe the Taos hum may originate from geological vibrations, extremely low-frequency infrasound generated by deep movements within the Earth. However, this hypothesis quickly encounters a major contradiction. If the source is geological, why do only Taos residents hear it, while other regions with similar underground structures show no continuous phenomenon of this kind? Although cities like Bristol, Windsor, and Auckland have also reported mysterious hums, none exhibit the same persistent stability or level of mystery found in Taos. This uniqueness has led researchers to ask whether Taos possesses a rare natural resonance, or whether we are facing a form of energy that science has not yet identified. All of this leads to the greatest mystery, the one above all others: why can only some people hear it? This is what makes the Taos hum so strange, pushing it beyond the limits of ordinary acoustics. If the sound is real, it must originate from the environment. And if it comes from the environment, most people should hear it, or at least audio equipment should record it clearly. But no, only a small fraction of people hear it. They do not share common ages, health conditions, occupations, or living environments. The frequency of hearing it is not consistent either. Some people hear it every night, others only occasionally. The most commonly mentioned explanation among researchers is low-frequency sensitivity, which suggests that some individuals possess unusually sharp hearing, capable of detecting frequencies most people cannot perceive. However, this hypothesis begins to collapse when compared with reality. If listeners were truly that sensitive, then modern audio measuring devices, far more precise than human hearing, should easily detect the signal. Yet the instruments remain completely silent. To create the strong, vibrating sensation described by witnesses, the intensity of the low-frequency sound would need to be far greater than any data recorded so far. Some experts have shifted toward a neurological explanation, proposing that the hum might be generated internally by the brain, similar to tinnitus. But this theory is also unconvincing, because all who hear the hum describe the same sound at the same frequency, appearing at the same times, something neurological illusions cannot produce with such consistency. More importantly, the phenomenon only occurs within a small, specific geographic area, something that tinnitus or neurological disorders cannot explain. These contradictions between scientific theories make the true nature of the Taos hum increasingly difficult to answer. Some bolder theories suggest that the Taos hum may be a type of sound wave, perceptible only to individuals with a unique neurological structure, similar to how certain people can see a wider spectrum of colors than others. Following this line of reasoning, a small group of people might possess the ability to detect ultra-low frequencies that lie beyond the measurable range of modern instruments. However, to this day, no scientific research has proven that the human brain can selectively perceive such an invisible frequency band. What deepens the mystery even more is the phenomenon's remarkable stability. If this were merely a collective hallucination or a neurological anomaly, it would fade over time or vary between individuals. Yet the Tao's hum has persisted for decades, with residents describing it year after year in almost identical terms, unchanged, undistorted, unwavering. This consistency does not resemble any known auditory disorder or neurological condition. Instead, it feels like a real source of sound, one that endures yet is so strange and elusive that humanity still cannot determine where it begins. The biggest unresolved question lingers. Is this sound operating outside the measurable range of today's technology? Could it be a combination of ground waves, airborne vibrations, and electromagnetic interactions forming a frequency that only a small portion of humans can detect? Could Taos have a unique geological structure that produces a singular form of resonance? Or perhaps are we confronting a phenomenon that science has no existing framework or instruments to describe? And the final question, the core of the entire mystery, is this: if the sound does not physically exist, why do unrelated people living in different parts of Taos describe the exact same low-frequency hum with the same characteristics? No one has an answer. The Taos hum lives on the boundary between sound and imagination, between science and the unexplained. It proves that some of the world's greatest mysteries do not lie in distant pyramids or buried ancient civilizations, but right within modern towns. Only not everyone can hear them. Not everyone is chosen. And that is what makes the Taos hum one of the most enigmatic phenomena of the modern age.